Hello everyone, and welcome back to our channel. Now, I know a lot of you use these videos to sleep, so before you drift off, I thought it would be a fun idea if everyone could leave a comment to let me know where you are listening from in the world. Also, like and subscribe if you are enjoying the case. Right, let's get comfy, relax, and let's begin. Story 1. The case took place in a large town in Shinon County, located in the southern part of Hubei Province's Enshi Autonomous Prefecture. On the afternoon of October 26, 2010, the Shinon County Police Command Center suddenly received an emergency call. The caller was a middle-aged man named Liang Shijuan. According to Shijuan's statement, he suspected his house had been broken into and his wife had mysteriously disappeared. About 30 minutes after receiving the report, Shinon County Police quickly arrived at the scene. Shijuan's residence was located at Building 1, Yema Road, in the old Planning Commission residential area of Shinon County. It was an ordinary 3-bedroom apartment. According to Shijuan's statement, before the incident, he had gone to the Enshi city area and didn't return home until the following afternoon. When he first entered, he didn't notice anything unusual, as the lights and TV in the living room were still on. But when he went into the master bedroom, Shijuan found the room in chaos. Clothes were scattered on the bed, and the drawers of the dressing table and bedside cabinet were all open. Shijuan said he tried to call his wife, Jiang Shuying, but discovered her phone was turned off and couldn't be reached. Faced with this strange situation, Shijuan had no choice but to call the police. At the chaotic scene, investigators began their examination. They discovered a horrifying sight in the closed wardrobe in the master bedroom. Among the colorful clothes, they found a barefoot wearing jeans in a curled-up position. The police felt a chill run down their spines. After pushing aside the clothes, they found a female body with closed eyes, a pale face, and no signs of life. Shuying! Shuying! The police heard screaming in their ears as Shijuan suddenly ran to the wardrobe, sobbing. The woman's body in the closet turned out to be his missing wife, Jiang Shuying. Due to the homicide, technical officers and forensic experts in charge of examining evidence also arrived at the scene. Through initial examination, forensic experts found that the victim, Shuying, was fully clothed with no signs of sexual assault. However, there was a wound on the back of her head caused by a hard object, suggesting that the perpetrator might have suddenly attacked Shuying from behind. Additionally, there was a clear strangulation mark on the victim's neck. Therefore, forensic experts speculated that she had been strangled to death with a rope or similar object, resulting in death by asphyxiation. However, at the crime scene, technical officers couldn't find any suspicious murder weapons. The only thing they found was a blood-stained cloth hidden in the bedroom wardrobe. Technical officers speculated that this cloth was likely used by the perpetrator to clean up the crime scene. Although they collected many fingerprints in the room, subsequent analysis revealed that these fingerprints belonged to the victim, Shuying, and her husband, Shijuan. These signs suggested that the perpetrator might have worn gloves and deliberately erased some criminal traces at the scene after the murder. Due to the numerous signs of ransacking, investigators initially suspected this might be a burglary followed by the elimination of witnesses. However, subsequent examination results showed this was a very illogical burglary scene. Although the belongings in the master bedroom were thoroughly ransacked, strangely, most of the gold and silver jewelry in the bedside cabinet and the cash in the wallet remained intact, untaken. The perpetrator seemed to be looking for something more important. Through Shijuan's careful comparison, only 3 items were missing from the scene: a wedding ring, a pair of earrings, and Shuying's mobile phone. The total value of these items was less than 5,000 yuan, about $700. This strange situation naturally made the police very suspicious. If the perpetrator was a thief, why would they leave behind expensive gold and silver jewelry and cash, only taking a phone and a few pieces of the victim's jewelry? Was it because they panicked during the crime and forgot their original purpose? But if so, why could the perpetrator still calmly clean up the scene without leaving any fingerprints or clues? To find clues, technical officers also carefully examined the doors and windows at the scene. The result was that all doors were intact, with no signs of forced entry. Even the cobwebs and dirt on the outer wall and drainage pipes were undamaged. Even the dust on the windowsills remained intact, with no traces or white marks. These details showed that they didn't enter the scene by climbing or breaking in. Combining all these clues, the police had an initial profile of the perpetrator. First, the perpetrator might have entered the scene easily, likely someone known to the victim or someone she didn't guard against. Second, the perpetrator had strong anti-investigation skills. Police launched an investigation into Xu Ying's social relationships. As a result, they quickly discovered several very strange situations. After the incident, Xu Ying's body was quickly taken to Sinoan County Police for more detailed examination. News of her murder at home gradually spread throughout the area. With her beautiful face and natural singing talent, Xu Ying was considered a renowned folk singer in the Enshi Autonomous Prefecture. She often appeared performing on local media. Therefore, local people were very curious about Xu Ying's mysterious death, but no one knew what she had gone through on the night of the incident. Regarding his wife's sudden death, Shi Huan also seemed very surprised. According to his statement, on the evening of the incident, he had called Xu Ying, and everything was normal. Then she was alone at home, watching TV while embroidering cloth shoes. Through examination, the forensic doctor determined the time of death to be between 10 p.m. and 11 p.m. on the night of the incident. However, this precise time frame made the Sinoan police feel very strange, because if the perpetrator was an intruder with the purpose of theft, they would surely choose midnight to act, not when the homeowner wasn't yet sound asleep. In other words, the female singer Xu Ying might have been killed out of hatred or love affairs. However, regarding this bold speculation, Xu Ying's mother, Chun Ying-fong, disagreed. According to Mrs. Chun, her daughter was very gentle and had never had conflicts or grudges with anyone. Although Xu Ying had a previous marriage, she had divorced peacefully with her ex-husband without any emotional conflicts. Through subsequent investigation and interrogation, the police learned that Xu Ying's mother, Mrs. Chun, also had complex social relationships. In Hubei Province's Enshi Autonomous Prefecture, she was a highly skilled Tujia ethnic embroidery artisan and a representative of Hubei Province's intangible cultural heritage. Usually, Mrs. Chun ran a Tujia embroidery workshop, and Xu Ying often came to help at the workshop. She was the successor her mother carefully trained. But Mrs. Chun could never have imagined that her beloved daughter would be suddenly murdered at home. As the investigation deepened, police conducted a comprehensive investigation into Xu Ying and Shi Huan's social relationships. All those possibly related to the case were interrogated and checked in turn. However, these relatives and friends all provided alibis for themselves. On the afternoon of the second day after the incident, the investigation had reached a deadlock, and at this moment, the police suddenly came up with a bold investigative direction. They discovered that, as the victim's husband, Shi Huan appeared too calm during the investigation. He didn't seem like someone who had just suffered the pain of losing his wife. Based on this suspicion, the investigators first met with Mrs. Chun and asked about her son-in-law Shi Huan's daily behavior. As a result, Mrs. Chun once again strongly disagreed with the police's suspicion. According to her account, around May 2009, Xu Ying had met Shi Huan. Shortly after that, they got married. In her impression, Shi Huan was a caring, filial, and considerate son-in-law. Whenever Xu Ying felt unwell, he would always put aside his work and return home to take care of her attentively. Although in the eyes of outsiders, the marital relationship between Qi Chuan and Xu Ying was very harmonious, the police still felt there was something strange about Qi Chuan's behavior after the incident. To not miss any possibilities, the police decided to investigate his specific whereabouts before and after the incident. According to Shi Huan's statement on October 25th, before the incident, he went alone to the central hospital in the Enshi City area for a medical examination and didn't return home to Sinoan County until the afternoon of October 26th. To verify Shi Huan's statement, the police later went to the Enshi City area to collect surveillance footage and relevant witness statements. According to a street surveillance camera in the Enshi City area at 7:02 p.m., on the night of the incident, Si Huan was walking on a local street. Additionally, investigators found a local hotel employee. According to this employee's statement, around 10:00 p.m. on the night of the incident, Si Huan was indeed in the hotel and had talked with him. The distance from the Enshi City area to the crime scene in Sononi County was about 62 miles. Even calculating at 62 Mutsun Pi, it would take more than an hour to travel from the Enshi City area to Sonone County. In other words, Si Huan would hardly have had enough time to travel between the two locations to commit the crime. After the suspicion about Si Huan was eliminated, the police investigation once again reached a deadlock. At this point, they hadn't yet realized that the breakthrough to expose the whole truth of the case was quietly lying in an inconspicuous corner of the scene. 3 days had passed since the incident. Si Huan and Mrs. Chun came to the police station almost every day to ask about the progress of the investigation. Along with the local people's buzzing discussions, the police were under great pressure to solve the case. To find a breakthrough, the then Deputy Chief of Sonone County Police, Zhang Rongjong, decided to return to the scene with 2 technical officers for a second examination. After the incident, the victim's room had been completely sealed off by the police. The entire scene still maintained its initial state after the crime was reported. Although the perpetrator had carefully cleaned up the scene, this time, Rongjong and his colleagues still collected an incomplete shoe print in an inconspicuous corner of the living room. Through measurements, technical officers discovered this shoe print came from a size 6 US shoe. This discovery made them very excited because the shoes Si Huan wore when entering the scene were size 8.5 US. In other words, this size 6 shoe print wasn't left by Si Huan. Based on previous profiles of the perpetrator, the police decided to once again summon all acquaintances around Ying and Si Huan for trace analysis and comparison. This included Ying's ex-husband, Si Huan's ex-wife, and several relatives and friends from both sides, totaling more than 20 key suspects. However, after comparison, all these people were eliminated because their shoe sizes were all larger than size 6. Although such extensive screening didn't bring any breakthrough clues, the police still firmly believed that this incomplete shoe print must still contain some undiscovered clues. Therefore, Rongjong specially invited a footprint expert from the Hubei Provincial Police Department, Meng Shahin, to help analyze the clues. Shahin carefully observed this size 6 shoe print and quickly discovered something unusual. Shahin explained to the task force members that in this shoe print, the toe, front, shoulder, and heel all had clear pressure marks, but the arch was in an empty state with no pressure marks. This situation showed that the person who left the shoe print must have been wearing shoes too small for their feet. In other words, the shoe size that the perpetrator usually wore must be larger than size 6. Shahin believed the perpetrator's actual shoe size must be around size 8 US, age above 35, height between 5'5" and 5'7", weight between 143 and 154 lbs, with a medium, slightly thin build. The perpetrator deliberately wearing small shoes to disguise footprints showed they had some understanding of Chinese police criminal investigation methods. But what they didn't know was that Chinese police had reached a high level in examining and analyzing traces and footprints. Moreover, afterward, Shahin went to the scene and sprinkled powder on the floors of the rooms. Although the perpetrator had used cloth to wipe before, some remaining bloodstains and footprints on the floor gradually appeared. Based on these hidden footprints, technical officers quickly restored the perpetrator's general movement route in the room. The place with the most hidden footprints was the living room of the scene. This showed that the perpetrator had carried out the killing here. Afterward, they had moved the body into the master bedroom and hidden it in the wardrobe. Additionally, bloody footprints also appeared in the dining room and adjacent bathroom. From this, technical officers deduced they had gone to the bathroom to get a cloth for wiping and then proceeded to clean up the scene. From these movement routes, it could be seen that the perpetrator was extremely calm. However, Shahin was still confident in promising the police that as long as they found all suspicious persons, he could identify the perpetrator within 2 hours. Therefore, the police again summoned more than 20 suspects who had been screened. Before, had them wear size 6 shoes, and took their footprints. However, after Shaheen compared them one by one, the footprints of all suspects didn't match in terms of pressure points and shape. Could the police have missed any other relatives or friends? Time passed to October 31st, 2010, 7 days after the incident. They decided to return to the scene for the third time. At the scene, Rongjong and his colleagues accidentally saw Shuying and Shijuan's wedding photos. These photos made them think of something called a gift money register. The so-called gift money register is when two people get married. Those who attend the wedding record the amount of money they give as gifts in a register. In other words, in Shuying and Shijuan's gift money register, there must still be records of many relatives and friends' names, and the real perpetrator might be hidden among them. Following this investigative direction, investigators quickly found Shuying and Shijuan's gift money register. However, they discovered a very strange situation. In this register, a corner of one page had been torn off. Based on the size and arrangement of characters on the page, the torn-off part must have contained about 5 to 6 names. To clarify exactly what these names were, the police again found Shijuan to assist in the investigation. However, due to the large number of wedding attendees, Shijuan couldn't remember at that time. And at this moment, Rongjong and his colleagues thought of something else. Usually before holding a wedding, people would make a list of relatives and friends to invite. Although this invitation list didn't necessarily have to completely match the later gift money register, the initial draft might contain more names. Therefore, the police immediately acted and found an original draft of the gift money register in a paper box at the scene. Through careful comparison, Senone police discovered that 7 people appeared in this original draft but weren't recorded in the official gift money register. After screening each person afterward, finally only one suspicious subject remained, named Lu Fushan. Although the original draft still recorded his phone number, this phone number could no longer be contacted. This mysterious situation increased the police's suspicion. But who is Lu Fushan? The police asked relatives of both Shuying and Shijuan, and all said they didn't know him. Next, the police searched for the name Lu Fushan in the population information system. But strangely, there were no registration records of him in the local population information. Based on previous case-solving experience, investigators began using some homophonic and similar-sounding words to search more broadly. As a result, they luckily found a middle-aged man named Lu Hushan. However, relatives of Zhang Shuying and Liang Shijuan still claimed they didn't know Lu Hushan. Through subsequent investigation, they learned that Lu Hushan was 32 years old and was originally a folk artist. Usually, he mainly did performances like lion dancing and dragon dancing. But later, due to business failure, he had no stable income and owed several thousand. 2 days later, police went to Hushan's residence and found he wasn't home. But on the floor, they still collected some shoe prints. Through subsequent analysis and comparison, technical officers were surprised to discover that among them were 2 shoe prints that completely matched the size 6 shoe prints left at the crime scene. This unexpected clue came too suddenly. The police basically determined that Hushan was highly suspicious of committing the crime, although his motive for the crime was still a mystery. After many efforts to search, the police finally got clues about Hushan's hiding place from a mahjong parlor. About 5 days ago, he had moved into a relatively remote rented room on the outskirts of a town in Senone County. To avoid alerting the suspect, police decided to implement a secret arrest operation. First, they organized tight surveillance around the boarding house. Then, they sent 6 plainclothes officers to secretly enter the room where Hushan was staying. In less than 30 seconds, the plainclothes officers subdued and handcuffed him. However, the interrogation after the arrest didn't go smoothly. Faced with police questions, Hushan first remained silent for a full day and night, then refused to admit any connection to Shuying's death. The interrogation officer had to present the footprint evidence comparison. At this point, Lu Hushan finally spoke up and posed a thought-provoking question. And this question directly exposed an extremely carefully concealed conspiracy. In the interrogation room, The suspect Hu Shan's first words made the investigators feel somewhat puzzled. He asked, "If someone uses a knife to harm another person, who bears the greater guilt? The person or the knife?" Initially, the police felt Hu Shan seemed to be asking a meaningless question. But after careful consideration, the interrogation, officers suddenly realized that Hu Shan was implying that he was merely a knife, and behind him was a mastermind who borrowed the knife to kill. After multiple interrogations, he finally admitted to the crime and revealed the mastermind who directed him to commit the murder. And this mastermind was none other than Liang Shijuan, the victim's husband. According to Hu Shan's confession, he and Shijuan were former colleagues. Later, they had also done business together. Although the business failed, they maintained close contact afterward. Hu Shan stated that Shijuan had instigated him to kill his wife, Shu Ying, to collect a large insurance payout. And under Shijuan's meticulous plan, this murder scheme for insurance fraud had been attempted 4 times, only succeeding on the 5th attempt. On December 28, 2010, police arrested suspect Liang Shijuan. However, when faced with irrefutable evidence, Liang Shijuan uttered a shocking statement: "Whoever marries me, I would kill them." It turned out that the marriage between Shijuan and Shu Ying had been a carefully designed trap from the beginning. According to Shijuan's confession, he was originally a worker at Senfong Tobacco Factory, then switched to working as a driver for his brother-in-law's mining company, earning over 3,000 yuan, about $440 per month. However, whether it was the stable job at the tobacco factory or the daily hard work of driving, these laborious jobs made him feel dissatisfied. He desperately wanted to escape ordinary life, always dreaming of becoming rich overnight to live a luxurious life, but the path to wealth seemed to always be unlucky for him. Until one chance occasion, Shijuan said he had watched a Western movie about insurance fraud by killing chickens. Afterward, the unfulfilled dream of wealth in his heart seemed to suddenly be ignited. After some thought, he conceived a cruel scheme. He decided to apply the method from the movie to his wife. At that time, Shijuan was still not divorced from his ex-wife, Sun Muqing. To implement the plan, he first found multiple insurance policies for Muqing and created opportunities for her to sign insurance applications. But unexpectedly, Muqing refused and told him, "Our family is already so poor, we don't have enough money to spend. Why do we need to buy so much insurance?" At this point, Shijuan feared the insurance fraud plan would be exposed, so he temporarily suspended the plan. Not long after, he proposed divorce to Muqing. However, after the divorce, Shijuan still didn't give up his path to wealth. He continued to look for his next target. Due to work, he later became acquainted with Zhang Yongzhen, the director of the Sinan County branch of Enchi Transport Company, and Zhang Yongjin was Zhang Shuying's father. At that time, Shuying was already divorced after her first failed marriage. She had returned home to Sinan County from Guangzhou City in Guangdong Province. Under the matchmaking of Mr. Zhang Yongjin Shijuan, who appeared honest and simple on the outside, very naturally got to know the beautiful singer Zhang Shuying. In Shijuan's eyes, Shuying had grown up in a well-off family, had a rather naive personality, and didn't guard against others. Without doubt, this was a rare target. With Mr. Zhang Yongjin's help, he quickly won Shuying's heart. As for the plan, to kill his wife for insurance money, he still never gave up. Even before marriage, on July 15, 2009, Shijuan had bought Shuying her first personal accident insurance policy with a maximum coverage of 240,000 yuan, about $3,300. But at this time, Shuying was immersed in passionate love and had no suspicion about his evil scheme. Until October 1, 2009, 41-year-old Liang Shijuan and 29-year-old Zhang Shuying officially married. Less than 3 months after marriage, Shijuan continued to push forward with his plan. On December 15, 2009, he bought a second insurance policy for Shuying, and this time the maximum coverage was 500,000 yuan, about 73,500. Not long after, he persuaded his wife to buy a third personal accident insurance policy with a maximum coverage of 320,000 yuan, about $47,000. At this point, The total death benefit from Xu Ying's 3 insurance policies had reached 1,060,000 yuan, about 155 to 800. And of course, the beneficiary of all these insurance payouts was Liang Xijuan. After everything was prepared, he began implementing the second part of the plan, which was borrowing a knife to kill. First, he approached his former colleague, Lu Fushan, and revealed the entire plan to kill his wife for insurance money. Initially, Fushan showed hesitation at Xijuan's proposal, thinking the plan was too risky and dangerous. However, when Xijuan offered a payment of 60,000 yuan, about 8,800, Fushan, who was drowning in debt, began to waver. Seeing Fushan still hesitating, Xijuan decided to increase the temptation. He promised that once he received the insurance money, Fushan would receive 100,000 yuan, about 14,700, in payment. When hearing this huge sum of money, the previously hesitant Fushan immediately agreed. Thus, this dirty exchange was established. After the Chinese New Year in 2010, the two decided to act. Xijuan secretly directed Fushan to monitor Xu Ying and choose an appropriate time to strike. To avoid suspicion, he specifically requested leave from his unit for 2 days and lied about going to Chongqing City for medical treatment. However, during the surveillance, Xu Ying happened to go out with friends, so Fushan couldn't find a suitable opportunity to strike. After this first failed attempt, Xijuan realized that if they wanted to execute the plan, they needed to think of a more discreet method. By May 2010, Xijuan took advantage of his job as a driver at the mining company to secretly bring home some explosives and detonators. This time, he decided to use a detonation device to create a fire, disguising it as a sudden accident to achieve the purpose of destroying the body. According to Xijuan's confession, he had secretly hidden explosives behind the gas tank in the kitchen, then placed detonators beside it. Finally, he placed a mosquito coil next to the detonators. The plan was to secretly light the mosquito coil, and its spark would ignite the detonator, finally causing the explosives and gas tank to explode, creating an explosion that would appear to be caused by improper gas use. After preparing everything, Xijuan once again took sick leave and left Sanon County. Meanwhile, Fushan took Liang Xijuan's house keys and secretly broke into the apartment. He hid behind the living room curtains, quietly waiting for Xu Ying to return home. According to Fushan's account, he planned to wait until Xu Ying went to shower, then light the mosquito coil and quietly leave. Unfortunately, that evening, due to working overtime, Xu Ying didn't return home until 2 a.m. Waiting for too long made Lu Fushan completely lose patience, and without waiting for Xu Ying to fall asleep, he hastily went to the kitchen to light the mosquito coil. However, he unexpectedly made too much noise and caught Xu Ying's attention. She thought there was a thief and quickly called Xijuan. At this point, Xijuan knew the plan was about to be exposed, so he immediately comforted Xu Ying to stay in the master bedroom, lock the door, and not come out. Then he notified Fushan to quickly retreat. The meticulous plan failed again, and Xijuan could only wait for the next suitable opportunity. But he worried Xu Ying would discover the detonation device in the kitchen, so he decided to abandon this action plan and secretly remove the explosives and detonators. Not long after, Xijuan thought of an easier murder plan. He wanted Fushan to secretly break into his house. First kill his wife Xu Ying with a weapon, then stage the scene as a burglary followed by witness elimination. This way local police would view it as a theft-murder case. As long as Fushan cleaned the scene thoroughly, the police wouldn't be able to investigate them. Therefore, on August 13, 2010, Xijuan, while away, once again directed Fushan to act. Around 1 a.m. that day, Fushan took Xijuan's house keys, intending to quietly open the door. But unexpectedly, the vigilant Xu Ying had locked the door from inside. The third attempt ended in failure. Time passed to October 2010. Seeing that the 3 insurance policies he had bought for Xu Ying were about to expire, and the chance to receive the huge compensation was about to slip away, Xijuan became increasingly anxious. After 3 previous failed attempts, Xijuan realized that having Lu Fushan secretly break in was no longer feasible, so he changed the plan, this time deciding to let Fushan enter his house openly. On October 25, 2010, Shihuan once again used the excuse of going for medical treatment, traveling alone to the Enchi City area to create an alibi for the time. Before leaving, he specifically instructed his wife, "Tonight, a friend will come to pick up a bank card. I've left it in the drawer under the coffee table in the living room. Just give it to him." At this point, Xu Ying didn't think much of it, completely trusting her husband's arrangement. And this seemingly normal arrangement would create a perfect opportunity for Fushan to strike. Additionally, Shihuan told Lu Fushan to definitely wear large-sized shoes, saying this could mislead the police investigation. However, when preparing the shoes, Lu Fushan found that large shoes were easy to slip off, so he had to choose a pair of small shoes that didn't fit. Around 9:00 p.m. that night, Fushan wore a backpack, prepared to go to Xu Ying's house. In the backpack, he had prepared an iron hammer and rope. Following Shihuan's instructions, Lu Fushan skillfully avoided the surveillance cameras around and arrived at Xu Ying's house to ring the doorbell. After entering, Xu Ying welcomed Fushan warmly, without any suspicion. But just as she bent down to get the bank card, Fushan quickly pulled out the iron hammer, striking hard at the back of her head. After a loud noise, Xu Ying fell to the ground before she could react. At this point, Fushan took out the rope to finish off Xu Ying. The frenzied murder happened so quickly and unexpectedly that poor Zhang Xu Ying, until her final moment, never knew that all of this was a long-planned conspiracy by the husband she trusted. After interrogation, Fushan pointed out the location, where he disposed of the murder weapons, and the police successfully found the hammer. On September 23, 2011, the Enchi Autonomous Prefecture Intermediate People's Court issued its first instance verdict. Defendant Liang Xijuan was sentenced to death for the crime of intentional homicide. Defendant Lu Fushan was sentenced to death with a 2-year reprieve for the crime of intentional homicide. Next, we'll explore a case that occurred on Jindo Island in Yeosu City, Jeollanam-do Province, South Korea. The main characters are a remarried couple. The husband, Park Tae-hyun, 50, worked as an insurance consultant. His wife, Kim Soo-yeon, 47, was a restaurant server. The couple lived in downtown Yeosu. One day in 2018, they drove to Jipo Village on Jindo Island for a trip when tragedy struck. At 10:56 p.m. on Monday, December 31st, the Yeosu 119 Safety Center received a desperate emergency call. On the other end was a woman's panicked voice, screaming, "Help me! I can't open the door or windows. It's too dark. I can't see anything. The car is sinking. It's sinking." The dispatcher urgently asked for the woman's location, but she was clearly too panicked to hear the operator's questions, only repeatedly, asking what to do. The call lasted about 4 minutes before the woman stopped speaking. After that, the sound of gurgling water could be heard before the call disconnected. The dispatcher realized the situation was dire and quickly traced the call location through the phone signal. They quickly determined the call came from near Jipo Village in central Jindo Island. The rescue team immediately departed for the scene. When they arrived, the scene was crowded with curious locals, buzzing with conversation. A man sat crying desperately on the dock. It was Tae-hyun. Seeing the rescue team, Tae-hyun grabbed onto them like a lifeline, saying in a hoarse voice, "Please save my wife. She fell into the sea." Soo-yeon, Tae-hyun's wife, was 47 years old, born into an ordinary family in Yeosu City with several siblings. She left school early to work and met her first husband through friends' introductions. From her first marriage, she had a son and daughter, both living with her. Soo-yeon was working at a restaurant in Yeosu, and it was here that she happened to meet Tae-hyun, a single father 3 years her senior. Their conversation seemed endless, and they gradually developed feelings for each other. On December 6, 2018, Soo-yeon divorced her first husband, but just 4 days later, she registered her marriage with Tae-hyun. After holding a simple wedding, they began their new life together. Initially, everything was developing positively, but unexpectedly, less than a month after marriage, Soo-yeon met with disaster. At the dock, Tae-hyun sobbed, describing Soo-yeon as a gentle woman who always cared for him. They had worked hard to build their new home together, never expecting such a tragic accident. The rescue workers patiently consoled Tae-hyun, though they knew that with the time that had passed, his wife's chances of survival were very slim. Tae-hyun explained that he and his wife had only been married a short time and were still in their honeymoon period. That afternoon, the last day of 2018, his wife had suggested going to Jindo Island to watch the first sunrise of the new year. So, the couple drove from downtown to Jindo Island. They visited Yecheon-do and Uduam-do for sightseeing, then moved on to Jipo Village. Instead of booking a hotel, they decided to drive to the dock near the village and sleep in the car while waiting for the New Year's sunrise. By 10:12 p.m., Soo-yeon was sleeping in the passenger seat. Tae-hyun wasn't sleepy, so he went out to smoke. During that time, he checked if the tires had enough air. When he reached the right rear tire, for some unknown reason, the car suddenly began slowly sliding forward. He realized something was wrong and quickly tried to grab the door handle, but it was futile. It turned out their parking spot wasn't level, with a slope nearby, and soon the car had slid to the sloped area. He rushed to the passenger side, trying to open the door to wake his deeply sleeping wife, but found the doors were locked and couldn't be opened. At this point, Tae-hyun was banging on the car window and calling Soo-yeon's name, but his wife couldn't hear him at all. Thus, he was forced to watch helplessly as his wife and the car slid into the sea. In that moment of panic, he completely froze, not knowing what to do. The car slowly sank, each moment passing like a nightmare that he could see clearly. He stood on the dock, screaming desperately, hoping his shouts might wake Soo-yeon and she would find a way to escape. When he heard faint cries for help coming from the sinking car, he jumped into the sea to save his wife. But because he couldn't swim, and with the pitch-black night making it impossible to see the water's surface, after several failed attempts, he had to return to the dock in despair. Tae-hyun tried to call for help but realized his phone was left in the car. He stood on the dock, shouting loudly, hoping someone nearby would hear. But it was already past 10:00 p.m., and there was no one around the dock. With no choice, he had to run toward the village for help, finally running into a guest house to seek assistance. With the guest house owner's help, he called the 119 rescue team. When he returned to the dock, the car had completely disappeared, beneath the dark water, with no trace of his wife. Realizing nothing could be done, he collapsed onto the dock, sobbing in desperation. The bad news spread quickly, and villagers began gathering. However, on that pitch-black night, no one dared risk going into the sea for a rescue. Everyone stood helplessly, waiting for professional rescue workers to arrive. As soon as the rescue team arrived at the scene, they discovered several suspicious details. First, the protective railings on both sides of the dock were very sturdy, but one section was severely deformed, as if it had taken a strong impact. A fisherman working there confirmed the railing had been intact before. Even more suspiciously, although Tae-hyun claimed he had jumped into the sea trying to save his wife, his clothes were strangely dry. From these irregularities, the rescue workers formed a bold hypothesis. They suspected this wasn't simply an accidental tragedy, but possibly a carefully orchestrated plan by Tae-hyun. They immediately notified the police. Receiving the report, police quickly arrived at the scene. When Tae-hyun saw the police appear, he showed momentary surprise, but quickly regained composure and declared his willingness to cooperate with the investigation. Faced with police questioning, Tae-hyun firmly maintained his initial statement, insisting his wife's accident was unintentional. When asked about the deformed dock railing, Tae-hyun claimed no knowledge of this, suggesting it may have been damaged before they arrived. Later, police visited the guest house where he had called for help to investigate. The guest house owner's testimony raised more suspicions. According to the owner, when Tae-hyun appeared to ask for help calling rescue services, his demeanor was extremely calm, showing no signs of panic or worry. He even casually walked around the guest house, appearing no different from a normal guest, aside from requesting to use the phone. This behavior made police increasingly suspicious. It was hard to understand how someone witnessing their spouse in life-threatening danger could maintain such unusual composure. This clearly wasn't the natural reaction of a husband in that situation. When confronted, Tae-hyun defended himself, saying his wandering around the guest house was to look for any rescue equipment that might be useful. He insisted he was actually very panicked, but tried to suppress showing it externally. In such an emergency situation, I had to stay calm. Otherwise, who could my wife rely on? Tae-hyun explained. However, these justifications failed to convince the police. To uncover the truth, they decided to check surveillance camera footage from the dock. Unfortunately, the cameras didn't capture the car sliding into the sea, nor the moment Tae-hyun allegedly jumped in to save his wife. The only thing captured was Tae-hyun walking alone toward the guest house at 10:57 p.m. that night. Through the Audis surveillance footage, police saw him leisurely walking toward the village, completely unhurried. His clothes appearing dry, as if deliberately taking his time, purposely not wanting rescue teams to arrive too quickly. Regarding this, Tae-hyun explained that he had never been to Jindo Island before, wasn't familiar with the terrain, and additionally, it was dark and he couldn't see the road clearly, which is why he walked so slowly. During the investigation into the suspect's background, police learned that Tae-hyun, aged 50, working as an insurance consultant, had a failed previous marriage. From this marriage, he had 3 daughters. Initially, the family lived a modest but peaceful life. However, gradually, his ex-wife began feeling dissatisfied with his earning capacity, frequently complaining that he couldn't provide a better life for her and their children. Financial conflicts became increasingly intense, leading to endless arguments. Finally, the marriage ended, and the 3 daughters lived with Tae-hyun. Wanting to provide a better life for his children, Tae-hyun constantly changed jobs from server to salesperson. However, in December 2012, desperate with debt reaching 80 million won, approximately 61,500, he and a friend committed a robbery of 52 million won, approximately $40,000, in Yosu and were quickly arrested by police. When arrested, Tae-hyun confessed his crimes frankly. He explained that with 3 school-aged children, tuition fees were an unavoidable burden, and he only resorted to crime out of desperation. For the theft charge, he was sentenced to 2 years and 6 months in prison. In 2014, after completing his prison sentence, Tae-hyun survived on temporary jobs and driving tourist buses. In May 2018, he applied for an insurance consultant position but was rejected due to his criminal record. Later, he applied for a similar position at another company and was hired. After joining the company, Tae-hyun focused on learning the business through training programs, quickly mastering insurance product details and compensation clauses. Notably, he actively researched potential customer information and skillfully created chance meetings for approaching them. Through these efforts, he rapidly became proficient at his job and achieved impressive sales results. In late September 2018, Tae-hyun noticed Soo-yeon, a potential customer, on his insurance prospect list. Discovering she worked at a restaurant he frequently visited, he meticulously planned to accidentally meet and approach her under the guise of insurance consultation. Learning she was separated and preparing for divorce, Tae-hyun became increasingly active in maintaining contact. From travel opportunities to attractive insurance package offers, this strategy proved effective, as they quickly developed romantic feelings for each other. On October 26th, under Tae-hyun's persuasion, Soo-yeon purchased a total of 3 insurance products, including 2 policies with coverage of 1 billion won, approximately $770,000. On November 9th, he had her buy dental insurance, and on November 20th, she purchased another policy worth 100 million won, approximately $77,000. At this point, being deeply in love, Soo-yeon had no suspicions and continuously signed insurance contracts following Tae-hyun's sweet talk. To create an impression of financial capability, he sold his old car to buy a used luxury car, the same fateful vehicle that would later sink into the sea. Not stopping there, Tae-hyun painted a beautiful future vision by promising to buy land on a beautiful island and build a house for their retirement together. Completely convinced by Taehyun's promises, just 4 days after finalizing her divorce, Soo-yeon hastily married him. Immediately afterward, from December 12th to 13th, Taehyun began suspicious activities. First, using Soo-yeon's name to buy damage insurance for his car, then changing the beneficiary in all her insurance contracts to his name. He even secretly transferred the beneficiary rights to his brother without informing Soo-yeon. During the investigation, police questioned Soo-yeon's 2 children about their stepfather. Her older son said his stepfather was very good, often taking care of him, treating him to fancy restaurants whenever he had free time, and taking him to interesting places. He quite liked his stepfather. After his mother remarried, she seemed much happier. Before the incident, his mother had been acting normally with no strange behavior. Soo-yeon's younger daughter also said she had a good impression of her stepfather. Initially, she worried that after her mother remarried, she might pay less attention to her brother and herself, but that wasn't the case. Their stepfather was meticulous, sometimes even more attentive to her than her mother. Despite Soo-yeon's children portraying Taehyun as a devoted stepfather, police remained cautious. They believed the brief time since the marriage wasn't sufficient to evaluate Taehyun's true character. In further investigation, police discovered that after marriage, Taehyun had changed the beneficiary of 6 insurance policies Soo-yeon had purchased to his name. The total coverage of these 6 contracts amounted to 1.25 billion won, approximately $962,000, primarily related to death by accident, traffic accidents, and similar circumstances. Police believed this was Taehyun's motive. He had carefully planned this accident, aiming to collect this enormous insurance payout. As an insurance consultant, he understood every insurance clause in detail. After coincidentally meeting Soo-yeon, he had targeted her insurance policies. He hadn't truly loved her but pretended to pursue her, quickly marrying her after gaining her trust and rushing to change the beneficiary names to his own. After everything was prepared, he lured Soo-yeon to Jindo Island to execute his sinister plan. Police also learned that Taehyun lived modestly, had 3 daughters to support, faced significant life pressures, and struggled financially. Someone had seen him write a note in his phone titled, "My Life Philosophy," which included the line, "I don't want to pass poverty down to my children." Although all clues pointed to Taehyun murdering his wife, he continued to deny it, instead accusing the police of making wild speculations without concrete evidence in their attempt to blame him. Subsequently, police questioned Taehyun's 3 daughters. They all stated that their father was an honest, upright person. Although he had made mistakes in the past, these were due to life's pressures and didn't mean he was a bad person. Since their parents' divorce, their father had shouldered all their living expenses. He was frugal with himself and had never mistreated them. By the afternoon following the incident, police had recovered the car from the seabed. It was a silver-gray 2008 Genesis. Upon inspection, the front windshield was completely shattered, the rear had clear impact damage, and the trunk was open. Soo-yeon was found in the passenger seat, showing no signs of life. 2 phones were found. In the car, one belonging to Soo-yeon and one to Taehyun, both unusable due to water damage. The forensic report showed Soo-yeon died from drowning, with time of death around 11 p.m. on December 31st. After recovering the car, police quickly discovered suspicious points. According to Taehyun, the car should have slid into the water. Front first, so the broken windshield could be explained by water pressure or underwater rocks. But if the rear entered the water last, why was there impact damage, and why was the trunk open? Additionally, police found another suspicious detail in the car. The gear shifter was in neutral N. This was unusual. Taehyun had parked at the dock to wait for sunrise. Leaving the car in neutral would risk it rolling, unless that was intentional. During police questioning, Taehyun offered an explanation for the sequence of events. According to him, the car was initially parked at the dock's edge, as it was an ideal spot for watching the sunrise. However, his wife felt unsafe there and asked him to back up. During this backing up process, he accidentally hit the protective railing, causing its deformation. Afterward, he habitually left the car in neutral and got out to check the situation. At that moment, the car unexpectedly slid into the sea. As for the open trunk, he suggested it might have been forced open by water pressure as the car sank. However, this testimony revealed serious contradictions with his previous statements. Notably, in his first statement, he firmly claimed no knowledge of the damaged railing, but now admitted he had backed into it. This inconsistency in his testimony further increased suspicions about his role in the incident. Significantly, Tae-hyun had worked as a tourist bus driver, indicating his driving skills were excellent, and he would have known the danger of leaving a car in neutral. Such a basic error seemed unlikely from an experienced driver. Regarding this, Tae-hyun explained that he hadn't known an accident would happen to his wife. If he had, he would certainly have put the car in park. He said he hadn't thought much about it at the time, believing that getting out to check the car briefly would be fine with the car in neutral. Who could have known that one moment of carelessness would lead to tragedy? He suggested. Strong sea winds combined with the slope might have caused the car to slide gradually. This explanation didn't reduce police suspicions. There was another suspicious detail about the car. One of the rear windows was open. Measurements showed a 2.75-inch gap. If all the windows had been closed when the car fell into the sea, it wouldn't have sunk immediately. However, with an open window, water would quickly flood the passenger compartment, causing the car to sink rapidly. At the time, Soo-yeon was in the passenger seat. If she had felt hot and wanted to open a window, she would likely have opened her own window. But when the car was recovered, the passenger window was tightly closed, while the rear window was slightly open. This couldn't help but raise suspicions. Police suspected Tae-hyun had deliberately opened the rear window to make the car sink faster. But Tae-hyun expressed outrage at this speculation, saying the open rear window was his wife's idea. He claimed she had initially opened her passenger window because she felt hot, but later closed it due to strong winds and asked him to open the rear window instead. This way, they could have some ventilation without too much cold air. Although Tae-hyun tried to deny his crime, by this point, all evidence suggested Soo-yeon's death was not a simple accident. With a clear motive established, police arrested him on suspicion of intentional murder. According to the investigation results, on the night of the incident, Tae-hyun had parked the car on the dock slope, used poor air circulation as an excuse to open the rear window, and then had intimate relations with Soo-yeon in the car. Afterward, claiming discomfort, he backed up the car, saying they would go to a hotel. During this process, he deliberately hit the protective railing, then used the pretext of checking the damage to put the car in neutral without engaging the parking brake. He got out of the car alone for inspection, causing Soo-yeon and the vehicle to slide down the dock's ramp into the sea. 1 year after the incident, the trial opened at the Suncheon branch of the Gwangju District Court. At trial, the prosecutor argued that defendant Park Tae-hyun, due to financial difficulties, particularly the pressure of supporting his daughters after divorce, had planned this incident. He murdered Soo-yeon, disguising it as an accident to fraudulently collect insurance money. On December 31, 2018, Tae-hyun had lured the victim to Jipo Village Dock on Jumoto Island under the pretense of watching the sunrise. He then deliberately backed into the dock's protective railing, shifted to neutral, and got out to check the situation. Subsequently, Tae-hyun pushed the car from behind, causing it to slide into the sea. The defense argued that while Tae-hyun did have debt problems and wasn't wealthy, his situation wasn't desperate enough to commit murder for money. Moreover, there was no evidence showing he had pushed the car after exiting it. They suggested the car might have accidentally slid into the sea due to strong winds. The prosecutor maintained that Tae-hyun's financial difficulties were his motive for the crime. Additionally, as an experienced driver, leaving the car in neutral was clearly intentional. Opening a rear window in cold winter weather was highly unusual. Latest investigation results showed the defendant had visited the scene on December 24th, a week before the incident. This behavior raised further suspicions. The car couldn't have slid into the sea without external force, further proving the unnatural nature of the accident. After a period of trial, the court found defendant Tae-hyun guilty of intentional murder and sentenced him to life imprisonment. After the trial concluded, Tae-hyun, dissatisfied with the verdict, appealed to the Gwangju High Court. At the appellate court, defendant Tae-hyun declared his complete innocence, stating he had never wronged his wife and wouldn't scheme such an act for insurance money. Though he had financial difficulties, he wouldn't do something so crazy. The car's slide into the sea could have been caused by multiple factors, and it couldn't be proven that he had pushed it. According to the police simulation experiment at the scene of the situation of a car in N gear sliding into the sea, there are 3 cases. The first case is the car is parked on a flat surface. If it slides, it is because someone intentionally pushed the car. The second case is the car is parked on a slope, and as soon as the handbrake is released, it will slide. The last case is the car was originally parked on a flat surface, but the person in the passenger seat moved the position, causing the car to start sliding. Through these 3 simulations, it was shown that the critical point for the car to slide was not fixed. The appellate judge concluded that defendant Park Tae-hyun lacked sufficient financial motive to murder Soo-yeon, and there were multiple possible scenarios for the car sliding into the sea. They couldn't definitively prove Tae-hyun had pushed the car. After deliberation, the court ruled that while Tae-hyun wasn't guilty of intentional murder, he was guilty of negligent homicide based on the Special Act on the Treatment of Traffic Accidents. The appeals court overturned Tae-hyun's life sentence and instead sentenced him to 3 years in prison. Still dissatisfied, Tae-hyun appealed to the South Korean Supreme Court. Ultimately, the Supreme Court overturned the appellate verdict and declared Tae-hyun not guilty. The justices argued that while a defendant could be convicted based on circumstantial evidence alone, such evidence must be without any reasonable doubt. The defendant hadn't been the primary decision-maker about the entire Jindo Island trip. The intimate relations in the car appeared to be at the victim's request, rather than the defendant's initiative. Before the accident, the defendant's health wasn't good, showing signs of dizziness and wanting to go to a hotel to rest. There were indirect facts suggesting the accident wasn't intentional. Therefore, the evidence presented by the prosecution didn't meet the required standard, leaving room for reasonable doubt. Additionally, there was no other evidence that could convict the defendant. After being freed, Tae-hyun immediately took the insurance contracts to the insurance company, demanding compensation but was denied. The insurance company believed Tae-hyun likely murdered Soo-yeon, arguing her death wasn't accidental and therefore refusing to pay. Subsequently, Tae-hyun sued the insurance company. On December 12, 2022, the trial opened at the Seoul Central District Court. At trial, the defendant insurance company pointed out that although Tae-hyun had been found not guilty, his changing of beneficiary information in many of Soo-yeon's insurance contracts was highly suspicious. Additionally, given the suspicious circumstances of Soo-yeon's death, they couldn't process the compensation. Plaintiff Tae-hyun argued that the insurance company was trying to avoid payment by using this as an excuse. He had been found not guilty in the previous drowning case, and the insurance company had no right to use that as grounds for denying compensation. After a period of trial, the court ruled in favor of the insurance company. Tae-hyun appealed. Finally, the appeals court reversed the decision, ruling against the insurance company and ordering them to pay all insurance benefits to Tae-hyun. A year later, Tae-hyun received the enormous insurance payout, totaling 1.25 billion won, approximately $962,000. Some believe Tae-hyun's purpose was clear from the beginning. He had meticulously planned everything, from changing insurance, beneficiaries to his wife's accident, calculating each step carefully. As an insurance consultant, he understood legal loopholes and ultimately succeeded in receiving the massive insurance payout as intended. Others believed Tae-hyun was innocent, arguing he alone couldn't have planned such a complex and sophisticated insurance fraud scheme. Perhaps everything was just a coincidence, and Tae-hyun merely happened to become the final beneficiary. Convicting him might have been somewhat forced. Ultimately, the South Korean judiciary seemed to think so too. Story 2 will explore a case that occurred in Zilinhot City Inner Mongolia Autonomous Region, which shocked China due to the killer's extraordinary intelligence and frightening talents. In this case, the victims were merely pawns in his twisted game. This tragic story began at 4:00 p.m. on January 2, 2024, when the Zillenhot Police Department received a panicked phone call from a man who said, "Hello, police. My sister has just been murdered. The killer stabbed her multiple times. Her name is Shui Ping, and she lives in Juyade Township. Please send investigators here quickly." About 10 minutes after receiving the report, police arrived at the scene. When they got there, they found villagers gathered around the house where the murder took place, buzzing with speculation. After preliminary investigation at the scene, police discovered the victim was a woman around 50 years old, named Shui Ping. When forensic doctors examined the body, they found multiple stab wounds, with blood covering the entire body. The crime scene was in the bedroom, with blood staining the nearby bedding. A heartbreaking sight. The time of death was estimated to be around 3:00 p.m. that same day, as the blood was still wet and the victim's body was still warm. The person who reported the crime was Shui Ping's younger brother, Jiang Yui. His house was just over 300 feet from his sister's. They were essentially neighbors. According to Yue, that morning while he was working, he received a phone call from Shui Ping's youngest son, Wang Qiang, asking him to check on his mother. Upon receiving his nephew's call, he immediately went to his sister's house. However, Yu never expected to find his sister murdered so brutally. Shui Ping was already 50 years old. He couldn't imagine what kind of conflict could have led someone to act so viciously against her. After thoroughly inspecting the house, police found signs of searching in the closet and drawers. The scene appeared to be a robbery homicide. Additionally, police found a blood-stained shirt and a pair of men's sneakers in the living room. According to witness statements, only Shui Ping was home at the time, so whose shirt and shoes were these? Could the killer really have been foolish enough to leave his belongings at the crime scene? When police checked the windows and main entrance of the house, they found no signs of damage or scratches from forced entry. This suggested the killer had entered the house easily. Therefore, they suspected it was someone familiar with the family. Beyond these initial clues, police continued investigating the scene. Other officers questioned Yue to learn more about the victim's family. Yue explained that his sister's family had 4 members: her husband Wang Gong, age 55, their daughter Wang Jing, age 26, and their youngest son Wang Qiang, age 22. They were a happy, harmonious family who often helped those in need. "We've lived near each other for a long time, and Shui Ping never had conflicts with anyone. If there were any issues, they would have been with her husband, Wang Gang. He often competed with other construction contractors. I don't know if he had conflicts with anyone. Shui Ping was just a housewife who took care of her husband and children. How could she have conflicts with anyone?" Zhang Yue added, "I don't understand why Wang Qiang called me today to check on his mother. There must be something more to this story. Wang Qiang is on his way home now. Questioning him will help clarify things." While team members were examining the crime scene, Shui Ping's 2 children, Wang Jing and Wang Qiang, arrived home. When they saw their mother lying in a pool of blood, they burst into tears and rushed toward her, but investigators held them back to allow forensic doctors to continue examining and collecting evidence from the scene. They could only stand at a distance, watching their mother's motionless body in anguish. Another young man had come home with them, Wang Jing's boyfriend, Zhang Lin. Though they weren't married yet, Zhang Lin appeared almost as devastated as Shui Ping's own children. After giving them time to process their grief, police questioned them about what had happened that made Wang Qiang call his uncle Yue to check on his mother. The sister Wang Jing revealed that around 11 a.m. that day, while working at her company, she received a message from a man named Zhang Bing. The message contained just one line: "The game has just begun." Wang Jing found this strange and didn't understand what was happening. She thought he must be joking or had messaged the wrong number. Wang Jing explained that this person had visited her home several times and was supposedly working at the traffic police department, as well as being a business partner of her father, Wang Gong. Wang Gong was a construction contractor and working. With him were his niece, Shui Rui, and her husband, Wang Jun. About 20 minutes later, he sent Wang Jing another message saying, "I've kidnapped your father. Prepare the ransom money, or he will be killed. The amount is 1 million yuan, approximately $138,000, and don't report this to the police." He also sent a bank account number for the transfer. At this point, Wang Jing wasn't sure if this was real or fake, so she tried calling her father, but he didn't answer. Worried about her father, Wang Jing took leave from work to go home and check if Wang Gong was there. When she arrived home, only her mother and brother were there, and they said Wang Gong had gone out that morning to meet with business partners. Wang Jing immediately called back the kidnapper, who then sent her an address for the money drop at Yaokou Park. Wang Jing and Wang Qiang prepared the money and went to the location specified by the kidnapper. But when they tried calling him there, he didn't answer. Then he sent another message saying their cousin, Shui Rui, and her husband, Wang Jun, had also been kidnapped and he needed more money. At that moment, she unexpectedly received a message from her boyfriend, Zhang Lin, saying someone had kidnapped her father and was demanding a ransom at Jiaohe Park. Wang Jing told him they were already there. At this point, the siblings suddenly realized that usually their mother would call constantly if anything was wrong. But strangely, today she hadn't called at all. When Wang Jing tried calling their mother and couldn't reach her, he, Wang Qiang, asked Uncle Yue, who lived nearby, to check on her. They never imagined their beloved mother would be murdered in her own home. From this information, police recognized this was a serious and complex case. However, police found it very strange. How would a kidnapper use a SIM card registered in his real name to send ransom demands? He was even someone known to the victim's family and provided his own bank account. Wasn't this essentially announcing his crimes? Secondly, one person couldn't possibly kidnap 3 people simultaneously. This suggested either a criminal group was involved or he had kidnapped them one by one. More importantly, police believed this crime had been premeditated because when the perpetrator killed Shui Ping, he must have known Wang Jing and Wang Qiang weren't home, allowing him to quickly carry out the murder. Could the killer be Zhang Bing? Did he deliberately lure Wang Jing and Wang Qiang away before killing Shui Ping? Next, police immediately formed 2 task forces. One continued investigating the crime scene, while the other worked to confirm Zhang Bing's true identity and plan the search for his kidnapping victims. Based on the bank account name, investigators discovered Zhang Bing didn't work at the traffic police department as he claimed, but was instead an unemployed drifter living in Zilinhot who had never married. Police immediately launched a large-scale search in the surrounding area with the suspect's photo. Officers questioned people on the streets, checked guest records at hotels, and traced surveillance camera footage along major routes. They also monitored train stations, common escape routes for criminals. While reviewing surveillance footage near the crime scene, officers spotted Zhang Bing walking on a street about 300 feet from the scene. This increased suspicions that he had killed Wei Ping. During the search for the suspect on January 4th, officers discovered Zhang Bing was staying at a hotel in the city, and the front desk staff reported he hadn't checked out yet. Police quickly organized a team to apprehend him. However, when they broke down the door, investigators were confronted with a cold corpse lying on the bed. Officers initially thought it was the suspect. After identification, the body in the room was confirmed to be Wang Jun, the husband of Shui Rui, Wang Jing's cousin. After conducting an autopsy, forensic experts estimated the time of death to be around 9 a.m. on January 2nd, before Shui Ping's murder. The victim had died from a severe blow to the head. So this was the room Zhang Bing had rented using his ID, and inside was Wang Jun's body. It seemed he really had kidnapped 3 people as claimed. With Wang Jun dead, everyone worried about the safety of Shui Rui and Wang Gong. When police questioned the hotel's front desk staff about the guests' movements, they said he had rented the room around 8:20 a.m. on January the 2nd, paid for 10 days in advance, and requested that no one disturb the room so they hadn't checked on it. This confirmed Zhang Bing was a serial killer operating in the area. The investigation team needed to quickly locate him. However, the bad news wasn't over. On January 5th, police discovered Zhang Bing had used his driver's license to rent another hotel room about 150 feet from the first hotel. When police checked the room, they found Shui Rui's lifeless body on the floor. After forensic examination, they determined she died from mechanical asphyxiation, with no other wounds and no signs of sexual assault. Time of death was estimated to be January 2nd. Combined with the check-in time, police deduced that Shui Rui was killed about an hour after her husband, Wang Jun. By this point, the killer had murdered 3 people in one day. He had chosen different times throughout January 2nd to attack his victims. The only person still unaccounted for was Wang Gang. Was he still alive or dead? Of the 3 kidnapped people, the killer had already murdered 2. At this point, everyone understood Wang Gang's chances of survival were slim. The series of murders in the city caused tremendous panic and fear among residents, who were also outraged by the killer's cruel actions. They promised to immediately report any sightings of the fugitive to police. Zhang Bing's photo was distributed through media channels so citizens could stay alert and report any information about this dangerous suspect. Continuing the investigation, police collected all surveillance camera footage from across the city for review. They also began investigating the victim's social connections more deeply. According to statements from Zhang Lin and Wang Jing, Wang Gang, Wang Jun, and Shui Rui had met with Zhang Bing to discuss a highway construction project, and Zhang Bing had been introduced by Wang Jing's boyfriend, Zhang Lin. The 2 men frequently communicated and met. So how could Zhang Lin not have known Zhang Bing's true background? It seemed illogical. Could Zhang Bing have been hired by Wang Gang's highway project competitors to kill them? But what puzzled police was that these people had known each other before. Why would they turn against each other now? Had there been conflicts between them? And why was Hui Ping, who had no connection to the bidding project, murdered so brutally? To answer these questions, police needed to quickly capture Zhang Bing and bring him to justice. After extensive investigation, police finally spotted Zhang Bing early morning on April 10th. A taxi driver reported taking a passenger matching Zhang Bing's description to Beijing. After reviewing the taxi's camera footage, investigators confirmed it was indeed Zhang Bing. Inner Mongolia police immediately requested assistance from Beijing police to search for the suspect. They also dispatched specialized police forces to Beijing to apprehend this dangerous killer. With Beijing police's support, Inner Mongolia police quickly identified Zhang Bing's hideout. However, when police arrived, he had already fled. They only found items like iodine solution and bandages in the room. Beijing, being China's capital, has a dense population and complex transportation network. If the killer was hiding there, capturing him would be much more difficult. Therefore, Inner Mongolia police continued cooperating with Beijing and Hebei police to implement a 3-sided control measure, determined not to let the killer escape. After checking networks on major routes across all regions, they finally found Zhang Bing's trail. He was in a taxi heading northeast. Police suspected Zhang Bing was fleeing toward the border. Consequently, they immediately sent search notices to 3 northeastern provinces and border police to prevent the killer's successful escape. At this time, Zhang Lin, Wang Jing's boyfriend who had been assisting the investigation, suddenly provided important information. He warned that Zhang Bing was carrying dangerous weapons, so police should be careful. Though not yet married to Wang Jing, Zhang Lin seemed deeply concerned about her family's tragedy. He was very interested in the clues police had gathered and always enthusiastically supported the investigation team. Upon receiving Zhang Lin's information, local police forces prepared themselves with full equipment to handle any unexpected situations this dangerous criminal might create. To avoid alerting the suspect and risking the taxi driver's life, police closely followed the taxi carrying the suspect, waiting for the right moment to make an arrest. At 2 a.m. on April 16th, thanks to surveillance cameras at a highway toll station, police spotted Zhang Bing sleeping in the taxi. This presented a perfect opportunity to arrest him. When the taxi stopped at the toll station, officers quickly subdued and successfully captured the dangerous killer, Zhang Bing. What surprised the police was that he showed no resistance and accepted arrest easily. After his arrest, police transported Zhang Bing back to Inner Mongolia for further investigation. As soon as interrogation began, he immediately confessed, claiming he had planned and carried out everything alone with no one else involved. However, police noticed that Zhang Bing's confession seemed to be protecting someone who was pulling the strings behind the scenes. Why did he insist so strongly on emphasizing that he planned and executed everything alone? To uncover the hidden truth, police continued their interrogation. When police asked about Wang Gong's whereabouts, Zhang Bing confessed that he had killed him and burned the body with gasoline. When police went to the location where Zhang Bing said he had killed Wang Gang, they found only remaining ashes. When police asked Zhang Bing why he killed these victims, he gave a reason. "I took revenge for my girlfriend." So his motive was revenge for his girlfriend. But who is this girlfriend? What conflict did she have with the victims? He said his girlfriend's name was Chao Lan. They had known each other for 2 years, but had never met in person because Zhang Bing met her online, and she was a Chinese American living in the United States. They only communicated by phone. Zhang Bing claimed that his girlfriend's family had once been wealthy, but had faced sudden misfortunes. Her father was imprisoned, and her mother died from illness in America. Chao Lan had told Zhang Bing that she had lost all her family members, and he was now her only support. After taking care of her mother's funeral, she planned to return to Beijing to meet him. Chao Lan had said her parents left her substantial assets in China, but Wang Gang's family and the couple Wang Jun and Shui Rui were trying to seize these assets for themselves. Worried about her parents' assets being coveted by others, she planned to return to China on January 30th, coinciding with her first meeting with Zhang Bing. On January 30th, as planned, Chao Lan was supposed to return to China. But strangely, when Zhang Bing called her that day, he couldn't reach her, and her social media accounts showed no activity. Chao Lan seemed to have vanished without a trace. At this point, Zhang Bing suspected that Wang's family might have kidnapped and killed her to seize her assets, with the initial goal of finding his girlfriend's whereabouts. Since Zhang Bing was already acquainted with the Wang family, around 7:00 a.m. on January 2nd, 2024, he arranged to meet Wang Gong under the pretense of discussing the upcoming highway project at a field on the outskirts of the city. When Wang Gong arrived, Zhang Bing suddenly attacked and restrained him, demanding information about his girlfriend Chao Lan's whereabouts. But Wang Gong insisted he didn't know who that girl was. In a fit of rage, Zhang Bing stabbed him multiple times, then used gasoline to burn his body in this deserted field. After committing the crime, he reasoned that since he would face either the death penalty or life imprisonment anyway, he decided to eliminate everyone who could potentially harm his girlfriend. Later that morning, around 8:00 a.m., he texted Wang Jun to meet at a hotel to discuss the highway project. Wang Jun immediately agreed and quickly arrived at the meeting point. However, Zhang Bing had arrived early with an iron bar, and as soon as Wang Jun entered the room, he struck him hard in the head, killing him instantly. After committing the crime, he paid for several days' stay and posted a "Do Not Disturb" sign on the main door. Around 9:30 a.m., he used Wang Jun's phone to text his wife, Shui Rui, asking her to meet at another hotel. He then booked a room at a hotel about 150 feet from where he had just killed Wang Jun. When Shui Rui saw the message from her husband's phone, she went to the hotel without suspicion. As soon as she closed the door, Zhang Bing, who was hiding behind it, strangled her until she stopped breathing and became motionless. Just 5 minutes later, the killer left the room, again paid for several days, and instructed the front desk not to disturb the room he had rented. After leaving the hotel around 11:00 a.m., Zhang Bing drove to Wang Gang's house. There, he found Xu Ping and her son Wang Qiang at home. Realizing it would be difficult to act with 2 people present, he devised a plan to text Wang Jing, claiming her father had been kidnapped, and provided a fake location where she and her brother could bring the money. When Wang Jing and Wang Qiang left the house around 2:00 p.m., he entered and killed Shui Ping with multiple fatal stab wounds. Since Zhang Bing had been brought to the house by Wang Gang several times before, Ping knew him and opened the door without any suspicion. After committing the crime, he searched the house for any valuable assets to take. Seeing his clothes and shoes were covered in blood, making it difficult to leave, he removed his shirt and shoes and left them at the crime scene, which police later collected. Many officers initially thought these items couldn't possibly have been left by the perpetrator. Zhang Bing's purpose in texting Wang Jing was to lure them away from the house and mislead investigators about the kidnapping victims. While police were searching for the other victims, he would have time to escape and search for his girlfriend, Cao Lan. He then went to Beijing to search for his girlfriend, hoping to meet Cao Lan one last time before being arrested and tell her he had eliminated everyone who could harm her. But when he reached Beijing, he still couldn't contact his girlfriend or find any trace of her. Feeling despondent, Zhang Bing no longer wanted to run. He decided that if police found him, he would surrender without resistance. Thus, the killer was captured in Beijing, and when searched, he had no dangerous weapons on him. Zhang Bing also stated he had never carried weapons. Regarding the motive and criminal process that Zhang Bing confessed to, Wang Jing and her brother, Wang Qiang, still fresh in their grief over losing their parents, were outraged by Zhang Bing's explanation. Wang Jing stated that her family had never known Zhang Bing's girlfriend and didn't know anyone named Cao Lan. Wang Jing believed Zhang Bing's claim that her family was plotting to seize Cao Lan's assets was completely groundless. Police believed that based on Zhang Bing's account of the crimes, he might not be lying about Cao Lan, but Wang Jing and Wang Qiang consistently denied this. Was the killer Zhang Bing lying, or was the Wang family hiding the truth? The investigation team thought that finding the woman named Cao Lan would answer their questions. However, this would be harder than finding a needle in a haystack because there were no real photos of Cao Lan. Zhang Bing had only known Cao Lan online, and the account could have been fake. During discussions, some police officers suddenly noticed something unusual about Zhang Lin, Wang Jing's boyfriend. They found his behavior very suspicious. First, according to Wang Jing's statement, at a party, Zhang Lin had introduced Zhang Bing to the family and said he worked in the traffic department. Did he really not know Zhang Bing was using a false identity? Second, during the manhunt, he was unusually interested in the clues collected by the investigation team and the progress of capturing the suspect. Even Wang Jing and Wang Qiang, the victim's family members, weren't as concerned as he was. Was Zhang Lin trying to help the investigation team catch the killer, or did he have other motives? Third, during the operation to capture Zhang Bing, at the toll station, Zhang Lin reported that Zhang Bing was carrying dangerous weapons, but when checked, Zhang Bing had no weapons, and he said he had never carried any dangerous weapons. Why did Zhang Lin make such a report? What was his basis for claiming Zhang Bing was armed? Fourth, when he saw the crime scene where Wang Jing's mother was murdered, Zhang Lin showed more grief than even her own children. She was his girlfriend's mother, but he cried inconsolably. These situations seemed quite unusual. Therefore, to avoid alerting their target, police quietly investigated Zhang Lin. Meanwhile, they secretly questioned Wang Jing and shared their suspicions with her. Wang Jing said that Zhang Lin worked at the Inner Mongolia Traffic Police Department. Once, when he invited her family to dinner, he also invited Zhang Bing, and that's how they met. The two men frequently communicated and met. How could he not know Zhang Bing's true background? It seemed very illogical. Subsequently, police called the Inner Mongolia Traffic Police Department to verify if Zhang Lin worked there. Just as they suspected, the department confirmed they had no employee named Zhang Lin. He had lied. Hearing this, Wang Jing was completely shocked. She couldn't believe the man she had loved all this time was a liar. The pain of losing her parents hadn't yet subsided, and now Wang Jing received another shocking revelation. Police investigated Zhang Lin's recent activities. Reviewing surveillance cameras along various routes, they discovered that on January 1st, his car had stopped at a gas station. But the person who stepped out wasn't Zhang Lin. It was Zhang Bing. Thus, Zhang Bing had used Zhang Lin's car to buy gasoline, and the murders occurred the next day. This suggested Zhang Lin likely knew about the entire case. Recognizing Zhang Lin's suspicious behavior, police brought him in for questioning. When faced with police questions, he initially gave evasive answers to avoid the issues. However, Wang Jing was present and exposed his lie about working at the traffic department. Officers also presented evidence from surveillance cameras. At this point, Zhang Lin admitted he knew about the case. He claimed that on the morning of January 2nd, he had gone to meet Zhang Bing to discuss some work when he accidentally discovered Zhang Bing threatening Wang Gang. When Zhang Lin arrived, Zhang Bing allegedly threatened him, saying if he revealed any information to police, he would meet the same fate as Wang Gang. Zhang Lin claimed he was too afraid of Zhang Bing's potential attack to report to police immediately. Police then asked, "If you knew Wang Gang had been killed by Zhang Bing, why did you text Wang Jing and Wang Qiang to go to Zhaohe Park to look for him?" Police believed his explanations were contradictory and completely untrue. Under continuous police interrogation pressure, Zhang Lin finally confessed. He revealed that the entire case was a conspiracy between the two of them. However, he had wanted Zhang Bing to take all the blame. Upon learning this truth, Wang Jing couldn't believe it. He had deceived her about his job, and now she learned. He was involved in the plot to murder her entire family. Her sorrowful eyes turned to looks of rage toward the man sitting before her. According to Zhang Lin's confession, his relationship with Wang Jing had been planned from the start. It was an elaborate scam without any genuine feelings. Zhang Lin revealed that he initially knew Wang Gang was in the construction business. His goal in pursuing Wang Jing was to gain her family's trust and then defraud them of their assets. First, Zhang Lin had lied about working at the traffic department and having an extensive network of connections. He promised he could help Wang Gang, Wang Jun, and Shui Rui in major projects. To convince Wang Jing's family that his promises weren't empty words, Zhang Lin reached out to his friend Zhang Bing to pose as a high-ranking official. He arranged several dinner meetings between Zhang Bing and Wang Jing's family. Seeing the plan progressing well, Zhang Lin invented a fictitious highway project. He claimed that in the most recent meeting, there was information about a new highway project being launched with potential profits reaching 50 million yuan, about 6.9 million. Zhang Lin said if Wang Jing's family agreed to bid, he could help them secure the project. Initially, Wang Gang didn't believe Zhang Lin could introduce such a large project. But because Wang Jing and Zhang Lin were preparing to get married, he didn't question it much and said that for such a large project, he would naturally want to participate. When Zhang Lin saw Wang Gang's interest in participating in this highway project, he said Wang Gang first needed to give him 1 million yuan, about $138,000, to establish relationships with the bosses and ensure the bidding would go smoothly. Wang Gang felt that providing 1 million yuan without any guarantees was too risky. Meanwhile, his niece, Shui Rui, and her husband, Wang Jun, who were also in construction, heard about this major project and knew about Zhang Lin's connections, so they were eager to participate. As a result, Wang Gang, Wang Jun, and Shui Rui directly gave Zhang Lin 1.7 million yuan, about $235,000, as preparation fees for the project's initial phase. However, after receiving the money, Zhang Lin spent it extravagantly on a lavish lifestyle. He was actually unemployed, and his only real talent was deceiving others. He had never been involved in any real projects. However, the $235,000 was quickly spent while the project showed no signs of progress. This made Wang Gang increasingly anxious, and he began asking about the project's status. At this point, Zhang Lin felt he was about to be exposed. If this deception was discovered, he would certainly face many years in prison. Therefore, a crazy idea formed in his mind. Zhang Lin wanted to eliminate everyone who knew about this deception so he could keep the entire $235,000. However, he didn't want to bear the guilt of these crimes, so he manipulated Zhang Bing to be his puppet and take all the blame. Actually, Zhang Bing's girlfriend, Xiao Lan, was completely fabricated by Zhang Lin. In reality, over 2 years ago, Zhang Lin and Zhang Bing had been colleagues. During his free time, Zhang Lin created a WeChat account, pretending to be a woman, to flirt with Zhang Bing, knowing he was shy around women but very loyal. He named this fictional woman Xiao Lan. Whenever Zhang Lin had free time, he would use the Kowloon WeChat account to chat with Zhang Bing. Gradually, through sweet words and promises, Zhang Bing became completely lost in this deception and believed it was all real. To further eliminate Zhang Bing's doubts about Chaolan, Zhang Lin repeatedly asked a woman to pose as Chaolan during voice calls with Zhang Bing. For over 2 years, Zhang Bing had blindly trusted in this online girlfriend he had never met. Later, Zhang Lin used the Kowloon WeChat account to swindle large sums of money from Zhang Bing through various excuses. Zhang Lin kept the WeChat account active, and whenever he needed money, he would have the same female accomplice call Zhang Bing to ask for loans. In his scheme to defraud Wang Jing's family, he also had Zhang Bing play the role of a successful official. When the scheme to defraud Wang Jing's family was about to be exposed, Zhang Lin thought of Zhang Bing again. He planned to turn Zhang Bing into his weapon, helping him eliminate all potential threats. To draw Zhang Bing into the conspiracy, Zhang Lin used the Kowloon WeChat account to fabricate a new story. The chat message read, "My dear Zhang Bing, my family is currently facing an unexpected crisis. My father has been imprisoned, and my mother just died from illness in America. I've now lost all my family members, and you're my only support. After I finish my mother's funeral arrangements, I'll return to Beijing to meet you. Currently, my parents left me some assets in China, but Wang Jing's family and the couple Wang Jun and Shui Rui want to seize these assets for themselves. Worried about my family's accounts being targeted by many people, I'll return to China on January 30th to meet you and protect my parents' assets. Then we can live together." But on January 30th, Zhang Lin made the Kowloon WeChat account unreachable, leading Zhang Bing to suspect his girlfriend had met with trouble upon returning to China. Zhang Bing then began to suspect that the Wang family might have kidnapped and killed her to seize her assets. Zhang Lin then added more details to the story, and Zhang Bing became completely convinced that Wang Gang's family had kidnapped his girlfriend. To avenge his girlfriend, and with Zhang Lin's assistance, the killer systematically targeted each victim according to Zhang Lin's instructions. As for the police's question about why he reported Zhang Bing was carrying dangerous weapons during the manhunt, Zhang Lin said he hoped there would be a confrontation where police would eliminate Zhang Bing. That way, no one would know he was behind everything. But the plan he thought was perfect only temporarily challenged the investigation team and couldn't fool the veteran detectives. Finally, the series of murders committed by Zhang Bing was revealed to have been orchestrated by Zhang Lin. However, even when the case was announced as solved and police told Zhang Bing the truth, he couldn't believe it. The girlfriend he had, dated for 2 years, was actually just a fictional account created by Zhang Lin. In the trial in Inner Mongolia, Zhang Bing, who had murdered 4 people, was sentenced to death. Although Zhang Lin didn't directly commit the murders, he was the mastermind behind everything. He was deemed a danger to society and was also sentenced to death. This horrific case in Zilinhot City has left many profound lessons for society. Story 3. We will explore a case involving a beautiful Mongolian model with striking looks. However, her life became entangled in a shocking crime that reverberated across Malaysia and the world. The victim in this case was Shari Bugian Altantuya, born in 1978 in Mongolia. She came from an intellectual family. Her father was a professor at the National University of Mongolia. Due to her parents' work, Altantuya grew up in Russia. Besides her beauty, she was highly educated and fluent in several languages, including Mongolian, Russian, Chinese, English, and a bit of French. At 18, Altantuya married Madai, the lead singer of Mongolia's famous band Black Rose, and they had a child together. The couple frequently appeared in magazines and interviews, garnering public attention. Their family of 3 was seen as a model of perfection. Altantuya's married life seemed carefree, but she dreamed of becoming a model and was unwilling to stay at home as a housewife. This ambition led to frequent arguments with her husband. Ultimately, their marriage lasted only 2 short years, ending when she was 20 years old. Perhaps because she was still young and yearning for love, Altantuya remarried the same year she divorced, this time to a designer. Unfortunately, this marriage also lasted only 2 years. Despite 2 failed marriages, Altantuya didn't succumb to despair. Instead, she decided to set aside her personal life to focus on her dreams. She moved to Paris to attend a professional modeling school, where she learned French and honed her skills in etiquette and presentation, equipping herself with both inner and outer beauty for her modeling career. Through hard work, she gradually achieved her dream and became a successful model. In addition to modeling, Altantuya was also a businesswoman. Her business involved exporting textiles from China to other countries, which meant she often lived and traveled between Shanghai, Beijing, Hong Kong, and Taiwan. To her friends, she led a luxurious lifestyle, frequently visiting high-end locations and mingling with the elite. However, at the peak of her career, Altantuya became pregnant again. Tragically, her second child was born with neurological paralysis and required frequent medical care. To this day, the identity of the child's father remains unknown. Rumors suggest he was a wealthy Mongolian businessman, but no one knows for sure. Despite this, having a second child with severe health challenges didn't seem to affect Altantuya's stunning appearance. She continued to thrive in elite circles and social events. With her striking looks and ability to speak 4 languages fluently, she could effortlessly blend into any social setting. Altantuya's life took a significant turn at age 26 when she met a man in Hong Kong in 2004. During an international exhibition in Hong Kong, her regal and elegant appearance caught many eyes. At the event, one of the people captivated by her was 44-year-old Abdul Razak Baginda. At the time, Abdul Razak was not an ordinary man. He was a Defense Ministry advisor in Malaysia and the director of the Strategic Research Center. More importantly, Razak Baginda was the right-hand man of Deputy Prime Minister Najib Razak. Razak Baginda's political power was second only to Najib's and far above that of many others. It was widely believed that in just a few years, as Najib ascended to the role of Prime Minister, Razak Baginda's political career would flourish further. However, he likely never imagined that his encounter with Altantuya would become a ticking time bomb for both his career and Najib's. At the Hong Kong exhibition, Razak Baginda was immediately captivated by Altantuya, and she, in turn, was drawn to his confidence and charisma. Their conversation flowed effortlessly, and Razak Baginda saw in her not only beauty, but also intellect. As mentioned earlier, Altantuya was fluent in 4 languages and had extensive experience in international business, making her an extraordinary talent in Razak Baginda's eyes. He invited Altantuya to work as his translator, though this title was merely a pretext to spend time with her. Razak Baginda treated Altantuya exceptionally well. He took her on trips to Europe, frequently bought her jewelry, and generously supported her financially when she faced difficulties. His gestures deeply moved her. After more than a year of knowing each other, in 2005, Altantuya, who had endured 2 failed marriages, regained her faith in love. She even expressed the desire to have a child with Razak Baginda and to become his official wife, despite knowing that Razak Baginda was already married. However, she also knew that as a Muslim under Malaysian law, Razak Baginda could have up to 4 legal wives. When Altantuya brought up this idea, Razak Baginda was not enthusiastic. His political career was thriving, and with Najib poised to become prime minister, marrying another woman at this time could jeopardize his prospects. To avoid complications, Razak Baginda declined the idea outright. Yet, being a man who enjoyed romance, he didn't completely cut ties with Altantuya, as he still wanted her to bear his child. Razak Baginda devised a solution. He arranged for a lawyer friend to marry Altantuya as a legal formality, ensuring she had a legitimate husband on paper, while he and Altantuya continued their secret relationship. When Altantuya discovered Razak Baginda's plan and realized he only saw her as a mistress, she decided to confront him. In October 2005, while in Mongolia, Altantuya resolved to travel to Malaysia to have a clear discussion with Razak Baginda. Accompanying her on this trip was her cousin. Unfortunately, things didn't go as planned. Upon her arrival in Malaysia, Razak Baginda seemed unwilling to meet her. For days, Altantuya tried to contact Razak Baginda but failed. With her strong-willed personality, she refused to give up, In the following days, she went directly to Razak Baginda's house, shouting in front of his gate. Despite her persistence, Razak Baginda continued to avoid her, leaving her to scream outside. At this stage, the situation was still just a typical affair involving a married man and his mistress. However, the story soon took a dramatic turn, becoming one of the most infamous criminal cases. On the evening of October 19, 2006, around 7 p.m., Altan Tuya and her cousin were resting in their hotel room when Altan Tuya suddenly received a phone call and rushed out. Her cousin, noticing her urgency, asked what was happening. Altan Tuya replied that her husband had sent someone to pick her up and take her to his villa in Damansara Heights. The original text seems to have a jump. Here, I will continue with the provided text, assuming this is where the narrative picks up regarding the explosives, though the transition is abrupt. After finalizing their plan, they went to Azila's house to retrieve the explosives. Sirul and Azila claimed that once everything was prepared, Sirul's ex-girlfriend left the scene. The two men then transported Altan Tuya to the Shah Alam Forest Reserve near Kuala Lumpur. Upon arrival, Azila produced an MP5 firearm equipped with a silencer and handed it to Sirul, ordering him to shoot the victim. Terrified upon hearing this, Altan Tuya began to struggle and panic. The two men restrained her and forcibly removed her jewelry. Sirul and Azila testified that Altan Tuya, facing two men, had no way to resist. Throughout the ordeal, she begged them not to kill her, pleading that she was pregnant with Razak Baginda's child and hoping this would spare her. However, Azila and Sirul were unmoved by her pleas. Bound by orders from their superiors, they felt they had to complete their mission. According to their confession, after the gunshot, Azila immediately stripped Altan Tuya of her clothing, and Sirul placed all her garments into a black trash bag. They used another black bag to cover her head, aiming to prevent blood from spilling around the area. Azila then grabbed her legs while Sirul held her arms, and together they carried her deeper into the forest. Once they found a suitable spot, Azila brought out explosives and divided them into two portions. Sirul placed one portion at Altan Tuya's head, while Azila positioned the other portions at her abdomen and feet. They connected the charges with detonator cords, retreated to a safe distance, and triggered the explosion. This was the sequence of events described by Azila and Sirul. However, they emphasized that they did not know the woman personally and were merely executing orders from their superior. Naturally, the critical question became, who issued these orders? Was it Razak Baginda? Or perhaps the other man in the photograph Altan Tuya had shown her cousin, Deputy Prime Minister Najib? Or was it someone else entirely? The horrifying nature of this case, coupled with its implications for relations between Mongolia and Malaysia, captured the attention of French investigative journalist Arnaud Dubus, a Southeast Asia correspondent known for uncovering sensitive stories. Arnaud had reported on the Aceh massacre, Myanmar's military regime, and the plight of the Rohingya people. As is often the case with investigative journalism, exposing the truth came with significant risks. In 2019, Arnaud mysteriously fell from a train in Thailand, and whether his death was linked to another assassination remains unknown. Returning to Arnaud's investigation of this case, he uncovered layers of complexity far beyond initial suspicions. According to his findings, Altan Tuya and Razak Baginda had traveled to Europe together in 2005. This trip, however, was not merely a romantic getaway. Arnaud suspected that one of their destinations was France, not for luxury shopping or sightseeing at the Eiffel Tower, but to discuss the procurement of military submarines. Altan Tuya, fluent in 4 languages, served as Razak Baginda's interpreter during negotiations with arms dealers. This deal involved Razak Baginda acting on behalf of then-Deputy Prime Minister Najib to secure military submarines. While it is normal for a Deputy Prime Minister to arrange military equipment purchases, this transaction was far from straightforward. Razak Baginda and Najib allegedly planned to profit from the deal, earning a commission of up to 500 million EUR from the French arms dealer A significant portion of this money was reportedly funneled into a Hong Kong registered company owned by Razak Baginda and his father. Arnaud's investigation revealed that Altantuya, upon learning of this deal, demanded a share of the commission. When Razak Baginda refused, Altantuya began to harass him incessantly. Unable to endure her relentless pressure, Razak Baginda reportedly sought help from another close associate of Najib's, the deputy director of the political division, to handle the situation. As a result, Altantuya was labeled a spy, abducted on October 19th, and ultimately murdered in the forest. According to journalist Arnaud's analysis, the entire case can be simplified as follows. Razak Baginda and Najib were involved in corruption, and Altantuya demanded a share of the profits. When her demands were denied, she resorted to blackmail. However, this backfired, ultimately costing her life. The information gathered by Malaysian police closely aligned with Arnaud's findings. Authorities believed Razak Baginda was the mastermind who ordered Sirul and Azila to carry out the murder. As a result, Razak Baginda was arrested and charged with abetting murder. At this point, the case already seemed highly complex, but it didn't end there. 7 months after Altantuya's remains were discovered, the trial officially began. Special Operation Officers Sirul and Azila were charged with murder. In court, they repeated the same testimony they had given to the police, admitting to the killing. Razak Baginda, on the other hand, was charged with incitement to murder, but he vehemently denied the accusations. He maintained his earlier statement, claiming that he was a victim of harassment by Altantuya and had no involvement in her death. During the trial, the case captivated all of Malaysia, sparking widespread speculation and rumors about the truth. One such rumor alleged that Razak Baginda had introduced Altantuya to Najib as a mistress to curry favor with his superior. The photograph of the three dining together in Paris, which Altantuya's cousin mentioned, was often cited as evidence of this claim. However, others argued that the photo circulating online was fake and that the real photo had never been made public. Razak Baginda never commented on these rumors. Another central figure caught in the controversy was Deputy Prime Minister Najib. He adamantly denied ever knowing Altantuya. By 2008, the trial was still ongoing. That year was also significant for Malaysia, as it marked the general election. Despite the cloud of the Mongolian woman's murder case, Najib ran for office. Though the case affected his reputation, he successfully transitioned from Deputy Prime Minister to Prime Minister. However, just 3 months after Najib assumed office, a bombshell declaration surfaced online, alleging that the new Prime Minister had known Altantuya and had an intimate relationship with her. This declaration was made by a former police officer named Bala Subramaniam. After leaving law enforcement, Bala became a private investigator. He stated that Razak Baginda had hired him as a personal bodyguard before the murder occurred. Razak Baginda allegedly sought Bala's services because he was being relentlessly harassed by a Mongolian woman named Altantuya, and Bala's job was to protect Razak Baginda and keep Altantuya away. In his declaration, Bala claimed that Razak Baginda didn't meet Altantuya in Hong Kong, but rather at a diamond exhibition in Singapore. Moreover, Razak Baginda was introduced to Altantuya by Najib himself. Bala further stated that Najib had spoken to Razak Baginda about his relationship with the Mongolian woman, mentioning her special skills. Subsequently, the three of them traveled to Paris for dinner, where the now infamous photograph of them was taken. According to Bala's statement, Najib had once told Razak Baginda that he hoped Razak Baginda could provide financial support to the woman. Following this, Razak Baginda frequently received calls from Altantuya demanding money. At first, Razak Baginda agreed to her requests, even purchasing a house for her in Mongolia. However, over time he grew tired of supporting her, realizing she was a con artist and had even deceived Najib. Later, because of the submarine deal, Razak Baginda decided to stop giving her money. When Altantuya didn't receive the funds she demanded, she often showed up at Razak Baginda's house shouting and causing a scene. Bala, Razak Baginda's bodyguard, stated that he had personally intervened to stop her on one occasion. At the time, Altantuya didn't continue her confrontation, but left a note for Razak Baginda instead. Bala mentioned that during his interaction with Altantuya, he found her to be someone he could reason with. Through their conversation, he learned that Razak Baginda had promised to pay her $500,000 as a commission from the submarine transaction. In Bala's declaration, he also mentioned asking Altantuya why she was in such urgent need of money. She explained that her brother had mortgaged the house Razak Baginda had bought for her, and she wanted to reclaim it. On the day of Altantuya's disappearance, Bala stated that he had seen her. Razak Baginda had called him, instructing him to detain Altantuya until his people arrived. Shortly afterward, a red car appeared, and Altantuya was forcibly taken into the vehicle. After Altantuya's disappearance, Bala was arrested by the police and detained for 7 days. While in custody, Bala immediately sought Razak Baginda's help. Razak Baginda, in turn, reached out to his superior, then Deputy Prime Minister Najib, for assistance. According to Bala, Najib replied to Razak Baginda via text stating, "I met with the Chief of Police this morning. The issue will be resolved. Stay calm." After 7 days in detention, Bala was told he could leave after signing a statement. However, upon reviewing the document, he noticed that all mentions of Deputy Prime Minister Najib had been removed. On the same evening that Bala made his declaration public, Prime Minister Najib held a press conference, once again denying any acquaintance with Altantuya. The very next day, something unexpected occurred. Bala issued a second declaration. In this new statement, he completely retracted his earlier claims, stating that the contents of the first declaration were entirely false. Shortly afterward, Bala and his entire family disappeared from Malaysia. His home was later found to have been broken into, and no one could contact him again. Naturally, he was also unavailable to testify in court. At this point, there were now 3 different versions of events. Which version represents the truth? After many days of trial proceedings, the court ruled that there was insufficient evidence to convict Razak Baginda and declared him not guilty, releasing him immediately. Upon his release, Razak Baginda held a press conference denying his former bodyguard's claims and reiterating that Najib truly had no connection to Altantuya. Of course, after Razak Baginda's release, the trial continued, shifting its focus to the 2 individuals who carried out the murder, Azila and Sirul. Their behavior in court was astonishing. During his defense, Sirul had an emotional outburst, claiming they were merely scapegoats protecting an unnamed person who had never been brought to court. Sirul stated, "I had no reason to harm the victim or take her life in such a cruel way. I will appeal. The court has the authority to decide my fate, but if it sentences me to death, it will only fulfill someone else's plan. Please do not impose the death penalty on me." Although both men insisted they were following orders, the evidence against them was irrefutable. Azila and Sirul were ultimately convicted of murder and sentenced to death. Their families were deeply emotional upon hearing the verdict, but immediately decided to file appeals. Azila even reassured his family as they faced the grim outcome. Altantuya's family, particularly her father, was dissatisfied with the ruling. He believed the case was far more complex and that those truly responsible for the crime extended beyond the 2 convicted men. Consequently, the family filed a civil lawsuit claiming that the case had caused them severe emotional and psychological distress. They sought damages of 100 million ringgit, equivalent to $22 million USD, from 4 parties: Sirul, Azila, Razak Baginda, and the Malaysian government. However, it would take 13 years for this civil case to finally go to trial, a matter we'll discuss later. Returning to the appeals process of the 2 death row convicts. After their sentencing, Razak Baginda's former bodyguard, Bala, unexpectedly resurfaced. In an interview, he revealed that after making his initial declaration, he had received a threatening phone call from Najib's wife, who warned him that his entire family was at risk. Bala claimed he was then coerced into writing the second declaration. He and his family were subsequently taken to Singapore by Najib's brother and eventually fled to various locations before going into hiding in India. Bala stated during his reappearance that as long as Najib remained in power, he could not return to Asia. At this point, a major turning point in the case occurred. After Azila and Sirul appealed their death sentences, the appellate court ruled that neither man had a motive to kill Altan Tuya. As a result, their prior convictions were overturned and they were acquitted and released. Notably, the year of their release, 2013, was also the year Najib was re-elected as prime minister. Around this time, Najib's government began prosecuting critics under charges of sedition. Najib's power had reached its peak. But does this mean that no one will ever be held accountable for Altan Tuya's death? When Sirul and Azila were released, it caused a fierce public reaction. Due to overwhelming public pressure, the prosecution filed another appeal. This time, the court reversed its previous decision. Sirul and Azila's murder conviction was reinstated, along with their death sentences. Police immediately moved to arrest them. However, Sirul had already used his temporary freedom to flee to Australia, and only Azila was recaptured. Although, Malaysian police requested that Australian authorities extradite Sirul for trial. Australia's opposition to the death penalty has led to an ongoing extradition dispute between the two countries. In 2018, Malaysia experienced major political upheaval. The UMNO party, which had ruled Malaysia for 60 years, was overthrown during Najib's administration due to involvement in the 1MDB fund corruption scandal by the opposition Hope Alliance party. Najib himself was arrested on corruption charges. Returning to the Altan Tuya case, after Najib lost power, Azila declared he was ready to reveal case details in exchange for full amnesty from the new government. We have summarized Azila's statement in 5 points. First, the directive came from Najib, and he and Sirul acted on Najib's orders. Second, Najib described Altan Tuya as a foreign spy and national security threat. In one meeting, Najib discussed killing Altan Tuya with him. Third, Najib sent him to the Police Special Action Unit's armory to obtain C4 explosives. Fourth, during the initial trial, certain evidence was suppressed and not submitted to court. Fifth, Najib told them they would receive help with everything, including protection from prosecution. Notably, although Najib was implicated in the 1MDB scandal, he remained free at the time. After Azila's statement, Najib immediately responded, claiming the Hope Alliance government was conspiring with Azila to frame him. Later, Najib posted on Facebook that the explosives found at the scene were RDX and PETN types, used in mining and construction, not C4 as reported. By 2019, Altan Tuya's father's 100 million ringgit compensation lawsuit finally went to trial after 13 years. Altan Tuya's father said that after learning of his daughter's death, he conducted his own investigation. He discovered a bank transfer of 18,000 from Razak Baginda in Altan Tuya's bank account. Additionally, he found a jewelry receipt for $18,000 Hong Kong dollars, also paid by Razak Baginda. However, this could only prove financial transactions, not a romantic relationship between them. Additionally, Altan Tuya's father revealed that before his daughter's disappearance, they had shared a meal together. During the meal, Altan Tuya told him she would go to Malaysia the next day to find Razak. Her father said, "I'm not sure if she was referring to Najib or Razak Baginda at the time, as both men had these letters in their names." Later, Altan Tuya told him she had a relationship with a powerful figure called Baginda, who was Razak Baginda. She also mentioned to him that she was going to Malaysia to request money for her son's medical treatment. During the meal, Altan Tuya went to the restroom. While she was away, her phone rang in her purse. He opened the purse to check and discovered a photograph of Altan Tuya with a man, but he couldn't remember who the man was. A police officer who had investigated the case also presented shocking evidence. It turned out that on the day of her disappearance at 1:08 p.m., Altan Tuya had actually visited the police station. The police reporting system contained 2 pages of documentation stating that her reason for coming to Malaysia was to meet Razak Baginda. Once she received the money Razak Baginda had promised, she would return to Mongolia. The report also mentioned that if anything happened to her, the police should look for Razak Baginda. In the report, Altantuya wrote, "Perhaps this is my fault. Now I truly understand he doesn't love me anymore. When I came to Malaysia, I did foolish things. I wrote him a letter saying I would vanish from this world. After receiving the letter, he threatened to deal with me. I was wrong. I blackmailed him, but now he's trying to kill me." The latest news is that a carpet merchant from Dubai, who was also a friend of Najib and his wife, has publicly admitted to being involved in Altantuya's murder. This carpet merchant was the one who forced Razak Baginda's bodyguard and his entire family to flee Malaysia. Story 4. It all started on Friday, March 15, 2013 in Chiayi County, located in the southwestern part of Taiwan. During spring, with constant rain falling day and night, that afternoon, the Shuisheng Township Police Station in Chiayi County received a request for investigative assistance from the Datong Police Station in Sanchong District, New Taipei City. They asked the Shuisheng Police to search for a victim's body in public restrooms within the area. It turns out that earlier that morning, Datong Police received an anonymous letter from the city of Tainan. The letter had no signature, and the font was unusually small. What stood out the most was that each letter seemed to be written multiple times, as if someone was trying to obscure their handwriting. At first they thought it might be a cruel prank, but when a curious officer opened the letter, the contents sent a shiver down his spine. The letter read, "There is a dead body in a public restroom 200 meters from the temple. Please bury it properly. I have no money for funeral expenses. Thank you." Although the authenticity of the letter couldn't be verified, the police didn't dare take it lightly, given that it involved a human life. They immediately sent an investigation request to the Shuisheng Police Station in Chiayi County. Upon receiving the notification, Shuisheng Police held an emergency meeting to plan their search. Officers were sent to check public restrooms in the area while maintaining close communication with the Sanchong Police to exchange information and ensure the case was resolved as quickly as possible. As night fell, the atmosphere in Shuisheng Township grew tense and eerie. After 3 hours of exhausting searching, the police finally found a clue. An officer was searching near the Shuisheng Temple in the center of town. The temple, which dates back to the Ming Dynasty, has undergone several renovations and is a popular spot for locals to pray. As she entered a nearby public restroom, she noticed something unusual. A plastic bag was resting on the lid of a toilet tank. She immediately realized that this was no ordinary discovery and called for other officers to come assist. According to the description in the letter, this could be the location where the body was dumped. However, the plastic bag was only about the size of a basketball and didn't seem big enough to contain a whole body. Initially, they speculated that it might be the body of a baby. As they carefully opened the bag, they discovered another plastic bag inside, the kind typically used in supermarkets. Upon peeling back 2 layers, a foul stench hit their faces. Inside, they found several more layers, including a woven bag, a jacket, a t-shirt, shorts, and women's underwear. 7 layers in total. When the final layer was removed, a head was revealed. The sight left everyone who witnessed it horrified. A young, newly recruited officer couldn't hold back and vomited right there on the spot. Based on the size of the head, it was clear that it belonged to an adult. The surface of the head was covered with a thick layer of salt and smelled like cured meat. Inside the jacket, officers found a piece of paper with the words Chen Wan Ting written in large, repeated handwriting, matching the style of the anonymous letter Datong Police had received earlier. The results of the forensic examination revealed that the victim was a female between the ages of 25 and 35, with a very clean, straight cut to the head. Based on the method of the crime, it seemed that the perpetrator had significant experience with cutting meat, as such a straight cut would be difficult to achieve with soft or frozen meat. It is possible that the head was in a semi-frozen state and was cut with a sharp blade. To determine the exact type of blade used, the body would need to be found for comparison and identification. The head had been treated with a pickling process, causing the skin to shrivel and lose moisture, giving it a shriveled appearance. Professor Yao Yi Kong from Taiwan's National Police University pointed out that the level of decomposition is often used to estimate the time of death. If the head had been frozen and pickled, it would make determining the time of death much more difficult. The case also attracted the attention of forensic expert Henry Lee, who suggested that the application of salt to the body could prevent decomposition, stop the growth of fly larvae, and reduce the foul odor. The plastic bag containing the head was an important piece of evidence, as the police could focus on analyzing fingerprints and DNA on the bag. The anonymous letter also, and consider the psychological profile of the suspect. This could help link the clues together. At the same time, the police worked to trace the origin of the anonymous letter. Although the letter had been sent from Tainan City, the stamp on the envelope was from New Taipei City, clearly indicating that the return address was fake. This made it difficult for the police to follow up on this lead. Therefore, the police shifted their attention to the name mentioned in the letter and the note found inside the plastic bag containing the head, Chen Wanting. After checking missing persons records, the police discovered that there were 64 people named Chen Wanting. Fortunately, the note in the bag mentioned Sanchong, so the police narrowed the search down to the Sanchong district in New Taipei City. After screening and verifying the information, they quickly identified a missing person who matched the victim's age. The police contacted the family of the missing woman. Later, a mother and her eldest son arrived to identify the body. Although the victim's face had shriveled and was difficult to recognize, the mother identified her daughter by the missing upper teeth. She also noticed the head covering outfit, which was the same one she had purchased for her daughter. The mother could not accept the tragic death of her daughter, and she cried uncontrollably at the scene. Through DNA comparison, the police confirmed that the victim's name was Chen Wanting, 34 years old. The victim's mother was named Chin Mei Yu, and she had 5 children. The eldest daughter ran a busy fruit business in Keelung City, so her mother, along with her eldest and youngest sons, had traveled to Keelung to assist. The house in rural Sanchong was home to her second son, Chen Xiaofu, and her youngest daughter, Ting. Due to Ting's mental health issues, her mother would visit her regularly. However, in December 2012, after a visit with her daughter, Ting's second son informed her that his sister had gone missing. After an unsuccessful search, the family reported her disappearance to the police, but she was still missing 3 months later. The mother received news about her daughter, but what she had hoped would be good news turned out to be tragic. The victim, Ting, whose real name was Chen Shuhui, was born in 1978 in New Taipei City. She was 34 years old at the time of her disappearance. From a young age, she was known for her striking beauty and delicate features, with long hair that resembled a doll's. At school, she was often referred to as the campus beauty, and many people admired her. Some even from the entertainment industry approached her, hoping to turn her into a star. However, when Ting was 15 years old and in junior high school, she began associating with a bad crowd. Under their influence, she began to neglect her studies, skipping school to hang out at bars, smoke, drink, and eventually experiment with drugs. At the age of 18, she had an unintended pregnancy. Her family pressured her to abort, but she insisted on marrying the father of the child, despite intense opposition from her family. 9 months later, she gave birth to a baby girl. After getting married, she moved with her husband and daughter to Tainan City. However, not long after, her husband enlisted in the military and had an affair during his service. The couple eventually divorced, ending their 4-year marriage. At 22, Ting moved back to her family home in Sanchong to live with her second brother, Chia Fu. The end of her marriage was a major blow to her mental health and marked a turning point in her life. Ting fell into depression and even contemplated suicide. Though she survived, she suffered from mental health issues thereafter. Neighbors often saw her wearing heavy makeup and wandering around outside in her pajamas. Due to this incident, her mother decided to change her daughter's name from Shu Hui to Ting, hoping the new name would help her turn her life around. However, most of the neighbors did not know about the name change and continued to call her Shuhuidat investigations revealed that Ting had a history of drug use, though it was unclear whether she had stopped. Police confirmed that she had a strong smoking habit. Despite her mother and second brother frequently giving her money, it was still not enough to support her high spending habits. To make ends meet, Ting resorted to selling her body to various men, including gangsters, taxi drivers, and others. She even set a clear price, $500 new Taiwan dollars, about $15 US for sex, and $50 to $100 new Taiwan dollars for fondling. Later, Ting began bringing a different man home every day, which frustrated her mother and second brother, but they were powerless to stop her. Following these leads, the police speculated that Ting may have had a conflict with someone during one of her encounters and was subsequently killed. Semen from an unknown man was found on a pair of panties that had been wrapped around her head. The police then began screening men who had previously been involved with her. A taxi driver was later identified, but the investigation results were disappointing. Although the DNA on the panties matched his, he had no clear motive for the crime, and there was no substantial evidence linking him to the murder. The police concluded that Ting had changed her name several years ago, a fact that many people did not know. However, the person who sent the letter to the police station seemed to know her new name, suggesting they were familiar with the victim. After interviewing several of her neighbors, some key clues caught the police's attention. One neighbor revealed that Ting had once said her brother, Chia Fu, had sexually assaulted her, but due to her mental health issues, no one believed her claims. One of Ting's downstairs neighbors shared the following. Back in March, the sewage system in my house suddenly began to emit a horrible, rancid odor along with chunks of meat and grease. The smell was unbearable. I went to Chia Fu, who is usually difficult to get along with, but for some reason he became unusually talkative and even offered to help clear the drain. This felt very strange to me, but in the end, I cleaned it myself. Police investigations revealed that Chia Fu had purchased life insurance for his sister, Ting, from several insurance companies, starting in 2011, with a total coverage amounting to $636 million new Taiwan dollars, or approximately 190,000 US. If this were an insurance fraud case, then everything would start to make sense. As a result, Chia Fu became the primary suspect. It was also discovered that Chia Fu had recently married Lu Mei, a woman from Fujian, China. After the incident, Lu Mei bought a one-way ticket back to Fujian to attend a family funeral. However, the police found her behavior suspicious. Lu Mei, 22 years old, is described as attractive and comes from a well-off family. Both of her parents have stable jobs. In contrast, Chia Fu's family background is more modest.
His father passed away suddenly over 15 years ago. His mother has no official job, and Chia Fu himself lives with his younger sister. In February 2012, Lu Mei met Chia Fu, and after dating for a while, she found him to be honest, a non-smoker,
non-drinker, and very kind toward her. She decided to marry him just a few months later. Although Lu Mei's family did not demand a dowry, Chia Fu voluntarily gave $260,000 new Taiwan dollars as a gesture, which deeply touched her. However, their happiness did not last, and things began to change after the marriage. Chia Fu became very stingy and hardly gave Lu Mei anything, not even a wedding ring, which she had to buy herself. On October 30th, 2012, Lu Mei arrived in Taiwan from Fujian, but did not find her sister-in-law at home. Surprised, she asked her husband about it, but he insisted that his sister had gone missing. He described Ting, saying, "She's not a good person, has bad friends, and is always using drugs and drinking." Lu Mei later met with her mother-in-law, but she did not mention anything about her daughter's whereabouts. Lu Mei recalled that both her husband and mother-in-law seemed unusually indifferent to Ting's safety. Furthermore, they often had secretive, incomprehensible conversations. When Lu Mei asked what they were talking about, they would brush it off, saying it was nothing. Lu Mei also noticed other strange occurrences in the house. She discovered that Ting's room often had a foul smell, which she couldn't explain. When she asked her husband if the room needed cleaning, he became angry and harshly scolded her. Chia-Fu claimed it was the smell of oil smoke coming from outside the window. Lu Mei kept quiet and refrained from mentioning the cleaning again. This incident made her fearful of her husband, and she no longer dared to disobey him. The more time she spent with him, the more unsettling traits she discovered in her husband. When he was in mainland China, Chia-Fu was very calm and considerate. But once he returned to Taiwan, he became a completely different person. He became aggressive, insulting, and even threatened Lu Mei over minor domestic disagreements. He bluntly told Lu Mei, "I bought you, and everything about you belongs to me." 2 months later, on February 26, 2013, Lu Mei hurriedly returned to China and never came back to Taiwan. During the investigation, the police contacted Lu Mei, who was in China, to ask why she had returned. At that time, Lu Mei replied, "My aunt passed away, so I had to go back to my hometown to attend the funeral." As for the discovery of Ting's head in Shuishang Township, Chiayi County, I had no idea about that. I only knew she had been missing for a while. Later, Lu Mei confessed the truth to the local police in Fujian. "I accidentally saw a frozen head in my husband's refrigerator, but I didn't know whose it was. Fearing for my safety, I hurried back to China right after that." She also mentioned, "When I first came to Taiwan, Chia-Fu suggested buying insurance for me, but due to issues with my resident permit, we couldn't proceed. Every time I think about it, I feel incredibly scared." It was known that Chia-Fu worked as a chef at a self-service restaurant in the Sanchong district of New Taipei City. The restaurant owner stated that Chia-Fu had worked there for several years, was hardworking, and rarely took time off. However, on March 12th and 13th, he suddenly requested time off, citing the need to do a thorough cleaning of his house. He also borrowed a pair of rubber gloves and a kitchen knife from the restaurant. 2 days later, on March 14th, he returned to work but did not return the knife. The restaurant owner found this odd but thought little of it, assuming the knife was not valuable. After examining Chia-Fu's mobile phone location records, the police discovered that his phone had pinged in Shuishang Township, Chiayi County, on March 13th, where the head had been found. Upon reviewing surveillance footage, the police saw that at 4 a.m. on March 13th, Chia-Fu was carrying 3 large black trash bags as he left his house in Sanchong, New Taipei. By 5 a.m., he was at New Taipei train station, wearing a black jacket, a wig, sunglasses, and a mask. The black trash bags had turned into a single white plastic bag. At 10:46 a.m., he took a bus to Chiayi County, carrying the white plastic bag, and appeared on a street in Shuishang Township. He walked along the main road towards a public restroom near the Baishang Dazhong Temple. 10 minutes later, he returned without the white plastic bag. The police believed that Chia-Fu deliberately disguised himself and went to Shuishang Township to dispose of the body, but he continuously denied it. Even when the police presented a photo of the head and asked him to identify whether it belonged to his sister, Ting, he refused to answer, citing that it was too painful. The police speculate that the black trash bags shown in the surveillance footage may have contained the remaining parts of Ting's body, and Chia-Fu's house was likely the primary crime scene. They believe there are still many other pieces of evidence left at his home. After obtaining a search warrant, the police immediately raided Chia-Fu's home. It was a 2-bedroom apartment. The main entrance led to a hallway, and turning left would take you to Chia-Fu's master bedroom. The kitchen and bathroom were on one side of the hallway, with the living room on the other side. Next to the living room was the second bedroom, which had previously been occupied by Ting. In the grout between the bathroom tiles and the closet in Ting's bedroom, the police found blood samples. Additionally, DNA samples suspected to be human were found on the handle of a knife and a rice cooker in the kitchen. Laboratory tests confirmed that the blood and DNA samples matched the victim, Ting. Forensic handwriting experts also discovered that the letters and notes found at the scene were written by Chia-Fu. Although the handwriting appeared to be copied, certain letters showed the same unique writing habits found in his personal notebook. What was strange, however, was that aside from the head, the police had not found the rest of Ting's body. A neighbor living below Chia-Fu reported seeing a large amount of minced meat leaking from the drain in his apartment. This led police to suspect that Chia-Fu had dismembered his sister, ground her body, and flushed it down the drain. The authorities even checked the septic tank, but, due to the time that had passed, found no useful evidence. At 3:48 a.m. on March 18th, the police arrested Chia-Fu on suspicion of murder. He was dressed in camouflage, wearing a helmet, and limped as he was escorted by officers. He was later transferred to Shushang Police Station in Chiayi County for further investigation. Faced with overwhelming evidence, Chia-Fu finally confessed to killing his sister. However, when asked why he did it, he claimed, "Aliens told me to do it. It wasn't my own intention." Chen Chia-Fu, 38 years old, was born in 1975 in New Taipei City and was the third child in his family. He had an older sister and brother, as well as a younger sister and brother. After finishing middle school, he became a chef. A few years before the incident, Chia-Fu changed jobs frequently due to unstable work conditions, and he never married or had children until February 2012, when he was introduced to a woman from Fujian named Lu Mei. They met and got married. To outsiders, Chia-Fu appeared to be a quiet, sincere man with few friends who rarely went out. His co-workers and bosses spoke highly of him. However, some neighbors found his behavior and mannerisms odd. He would often sit motionless on his motorcycle, and when he saw acquaintances he would smile awkwardly, making others feel uncomfortable. Beneath this seemingly dull exterior, Chia-Fu had another side to him. He was an extreme fan. This type of fan engages in stalking, surveillance, and taking covert photos to gather personal information about celebrities, often taking pride in doing so. When police searched his belongings, they found a notebook filled with lewd love letters to his idol, mostly directed at actress Jeannie Chuo. He also sent her these love letters along with nude photos of himself, calling her his wife and threatening to prevent her from filming kissing scenes with anyone else. There was even an instance where Chia-Fu sent a stack of used toilet paper covered in his semen to the actress. For Chia-Fu, these perverse actions caused him no shame. He even expressed his excitement to the police, his face revealing a disturbing sense of pleasure. In early 2011, Chia-Fu began purchasing life insurance for his sister, Ting, with him and their mother as the beneficiaries. However, due to his inability to pay the premiums, one of the policies was eventually canceled. The police suspected that he might have had a fraudulent motive, possibly intending to claim the insurance money through murder. However, Chia-Fu denied this, stating, "I only have a mortgage of 300,000 New Taiwan, about $9,000 US, and a monthly income of $40,000 New Taiwan dollars, about now $200 US. So I'm not financially pressured. The insurance was simply a way to further protect my family." Investigations revealed that by December 2011, Chia-Fu had begun planning to obtain a mental disorder certification. His older brother was on psychiatric medication, and his sister Ting also had mental health issues, so Chia-Fu used his family's history as an excuse to purchase such medications. In March 2012, he was granted a certificate for moderate mental disorder. To avoid attracting the attention of neighbors, Chia-Fu started bringing black trash bags into the house in batches, presumably in preparation for dismembering the body. On the night of December 9, 2012, when the weather turned cold, their mother went to visit their older brother's home in Keelung after a trip back to the countryside. It was that very night that Chia-Fu took action. He was awakened by numerous phone calls and overheard his sister arranging dates and engaging in prostitution with multiple men. Out of anger and frustration, he decided to kill his sister. Afterward, he applied salt to her head to preserve it and prevent decomposition, storing the rest of her body in her room until 3 months later, when he finally disposed of it, between March the 12th and 13th, 2013. Furthermore, he wrapped a pair of his sister's underwear, which had traces of another man's semen on it, around her head to mislead the police into thinking that the murder had been committed in a different way. However, after 2 days of leaving the head in the bathroom without any action from authorities, Chia-Fu began to worry. What if the cleaning staff found the bag and threw it away? If the police couldn't confirm that Ting was dead, he would have to wait 7 years until she was officially declared missing before a death certificate could be issued. He couldn't wait that long. He wanted to collect the insurance money as soon as possible. To ensure someone discovered the body sooner, on March 15th, he anonymously sent a letter to the Sanchong police station. 6 months after the incident in June 2013, the case went to trial at the Chiayi County Court. The trial began, and Chiafu was charged with murder and fraud. During the proceedings, Chiafu suddenly changed his testimony and claimed his innocence. Throughout the trial, he repeatedly acted insane, claiming, "Aliens implanted a chip in my brain, and they are using lasers to track me." Due to his erratic behavior, he was sent to the National Taiwan University Hospital for a psychiatric evaluation. The results showed that Chiafu's mental state was completely normal, with no signs of abnormalities. After the trial, the Chiayi County Court issued a first-instance verdict. Chiafu was found guilty of murder and sentenced to death. The defense lawyer was dissatisfied with the verdict and appealed. In March 2015, during the appeal, the judges considered Chiafu's filial piety toward his mother and the fact that his mother had taken care of the victim, Ting, for many years. She had lost her daughter, and if Chiafu were sentenced to death, it would mean losing another child. As a result, the appellate court reduced the sentence to life imprisonment. This decision caused public outrage, with many people openly criticizing how a seemingly filial son could use such a brutal method to kill his own sister in order to fraudulently collect insurance money. However, the case ended with the judge's decision. Later, rumors began to spread about a ghostly woman in a public restroom at the Baisheng Dajhong Temple. According to legend, people reported hearing a woman's mournful crying at night in the public restroom, and some even claimed to have seen a woman in a white dress wandering there. There were many different versions of the legend, all steeped in supernatural and mysterious elements. As a result, the restroom was eventually demolished and rebuilt, and the ghostly tales faded away. A family that seemed normal was shattered by a tragic and heartbreaking outcome, especially as the perpetrator turned out to be the brother who shared the same blood. Story 5. Around 5:30 p.m. on July 9, 2007, a concussive explosion shattered the peace on Jianxi Road in Jinan City, Shandong Province, China. The force of the blast had completely destroyed a Honda car, scattering the driver's body parts, some of which were found on the windows of nearby stores. A nearby taxi also caught fire, leaving the driver severely burned. Due to the severity of the explosion, a fruit vendor near the car was also injured, struck in the neck by debris, and requiring over 10 stitches. The entire neighborhood was in chaos. Bystanders gathered, speculating wildly. Some thought it was a routine traffic accident, while others suspected a fuel tank explosion from a collision. But could an ordinary accident or fuel tank explosion have caused such devastating destruction? This question began to take root in the minds of the witnesses. Just minutes after the explosion, the police arrived at the scene. Through preliminary investigation, they confirmed one fatality, one pedestrian injury, significant damage to a taxi, and 2 other vehicles completely destroyed. With such a serious explosion occurring in the bustling city center, the investigators' urgent task was to determine the cause. Was this an unfortunate accident, or did a darker plot lie behind it? As the investigation delved deeper, the detectives realized the truly grave nature of the case. They discovered this was not a random explosion, but one carried out using TNT, a tightly controlled military explosive. This detail immediately revealed a terrifying truth. This was a premeditated murder. Through forensic analysis, the victim's identity was quickly established. She was 31-year-old Liu Huping, residing in a luxurious 1400 SQFT apartment in the Rue residential community. The destroyed car was a brand new, light blue Honda. But what drew the investigators' attention was not the victim's affluent lifestyle, but her unique status. A senior political cadre at the Jinan Municipal Land Resources Bureau and the deputy secretary of the Youth League Committee of the agency. News of the horrific death of a female state official in the bustling streets quickly spread, triggering an earthquake of public opinion in Jinan. The case was immediately elevated to a higher level of investigation. Agonizing questions began to surface. Who could have harbored such deep hatred to use such a brutal method to kill a government official? And what led Liu Huping to pay the ultimate price? While it seemed that all traces had been erased by the explosion, a surprising discovery opened the first breakthrough in the investigation. In a trash can near the scene, the investigators found a shattered mobile phone and a remote control device. After extensive cross-referencing with telecom providers, they were able to identify the owner of the phone's SIM card as Chen Li, a 50-year-old deputy team leader of the 3rd Squadron of the Jinan Municipal Public Security Bureau. This clue became even more suspicious when linked to the use of TNT, a tightly controlled military explosive that only those in special positions could access. As the investigators were considering this connection, another team of police, through questioning of local vendors and residents, learned that a police car had appeared near the site just before the explosion. Through the surveillance camera system and other investigative methods, they quickly determined this car belonged to the security team where Chen Li was employed. In a covert investigation, the detectives examined this police car and confirmed that some of the residues found in the vehicle matched those from the explosion. This suggests that after using the car to commit the crime, the perpetrator had failed to thoroughly clean the vehicle, leaving a significant amount of explosive powder on the person and footprints of the culprit inside the police car. The security team and other units also confirmed that on the day of the incident, only Chen Li's vehicle had appeared near the scene. All evidence was now pointing towards this deputy team leader. Another team of police had searched the victim, Huping's home, and discovered more suspicious information, helping the investigation move closer to the truth. In Huping's residence, the investigators found many photos, including one of her young son, some family photos, and surprisingly intimate photos of Huping with a man. The shocking discovery was that the man in the photos was Duan Yihei, the director of the Standing Committee of the Jinan Municipal People's Congress. Why were Yihei's photos in Huping's home? The nature of their relationship in those photos was clear without further explanation. There was only one possible explanation: Yihei and Huping were lovers, but a romantic relationship did not necessarily relate to the murder case. The police still needed to investigate further. With the initial hypothesis of a murder motivated by love or hatred, the investigators identified 3 primary suspects: Huping's ex-husband, who may still harbor resentment, Chen Li, the suspicious deputy team leader, and Yihei, the secret lover of the victim. Each of them had the motive and capability to carry out this brutal act. The circle of suspicion quickly narrowed as the police eliminated Huping's ex-husband from the suspect list. However, an unexpected discovery pushed the investigation in an entirely new direction: the special relationship between Chen Li and Yihei. Chen Li was not just an ordinary police officer, but Yihei's nephew-in-law. This revelation was like a lightning bolt splitting the night sky, making the investigators sense an even greater conspiracy unfolding. Just 3 days after the explosion, on July 11th, with irrefutable evidence from the mobile phone and other physical evidence, Chen Li was arrested in Qingdao. During the interrogation, in an atmosphere of tension disguised as a tea invitation, Chen Li quickly realized his situation. As an experienced police officer, he understood that when his colleagues had traced his whereabouts, it meant they possessed evidence he could not refute. Thus, Chen Li quickly confessed the entire crime process, as directed by Yihei. Only 4 days after the horrific explosion, an even greater earthquake had shaken the political circle of Jinan. The suspect, Yihei, the incumbent director of the Standing Committee of the Jinan Municipal People's Congress, a provincial-level official, was apprehended by a joint investigation team from the Provincial Discipline Inspection Commission, the Provincial Public Security Department, and the Provincial Procuratorate. Faced with irrefutable evidence, after just 1 hour of interrogation, the powerful official's facade completely collapsed. Yihei admitted to orchestrating the explosion on July 9th, using his own nephew-in-law, Chen Li, as a tool to carry out this evil plan. During the interrogation, he acknowledged his regret, but not for taking a life, only for the method he had chosen. With chilling indifference, Yihei declared that, if given the chance, he would still kill Huping. Only he would choose a different method. In his tone, there was not a hint of remorse for the death of his former lover, only deep hatred and determination to end what he called their ill-fated romance in a way that was perfect to him. Behind those cold words lay the haunting question: what had transformed their love into such deep hatred? The answer began with Duan Yihe's testimony, as he revealed the origin of this tragedy, a fleeting romance that had begun 14 years earlier. Duan Yihe was born on January 17, 1946, into a poor farming family. His childhood was full of hardship, the early mornings cutting grass in the mist, the long days herding buffalo under the sun, the late evenings feeding the pigs. A deep scar on the back of his left hand from a wood-cutting accident remained an indelible mark of those difficult years. But poverty could not stop his ambition. Through extraordinary effort, in 1965, Yihe passed the entrance exam to enter Xi'an Jiaotong University. As the first college student from his village, he became the pride of the local community, likened to a golden phoenix taking flight from the chicken coop. Yihe did not disappoint those expectations. His college degree opened the door to his official career. With his shrewd personal skills and exceptional capabilities, his career rose like a ship sailing with the wind, step by step climbing the ladder of power. At the peak of his power, Yihe maintained the simple and approachable demeanor of his peasant origins. Whenever he visited his hometown, even as a high-ranking official, he insisted the driver stop the car outside the village. Alone, he would walk the familiar dirt roads, stopping to chat with the villagers, inquiring about their lives. A journey of just a few hundred meters that could be completed in minutes would often last an hour with him. These genuine gestures made the villagers absolutely trust that Yihe was an incorruptible official, indifferent to fame and fortune. But fate has unexpected turns. Everything changed when a beautiful woman named Liu Huping entered his life. In 1996, a new opportunity for advancement came when Yihe was transferred to Liaocheng, Shandong province. Since his wife, who was working at a provincial hospital at the time, could not accompany him, he had to go alone. After arriving in Liaocheng, Yihe was arranged to stay in a guest house of the agency. To take care of the living needs of the new official, the management arranged a young employee, Liu Huping. She was only 18 years old that year. Liu Huping was thoughtful and attentive, taking meticulous care of Yihe. She would wash his dirty clothes, prepare delicious meals when he was hungry, and even have his toothpaste ready. In those lonely months away from his wife, Huping's considerate care gradually invaded Yihe's heart, sowing the seeds of an unnamed affection for the young Huping. Yihe represented not only a powerful official but the embodiment of success and authority, an invisible magic that always had a strange allure for women. Gradually, their daily interactions ignited a feeling that went far beyond the ordinary relationship between an official and a servant. Yihe was 48 years old, while Huping was only 18. This significant age gap seemed to foreshadow the tragic ending of their relationship. When Yihe was transferred back to Jinan, he should have ended this illicit affair. But unable to part with his young lover, he committed his first abuse of power. He arranged for Huping to be transferred to work at a company under the Shandong Provincial Electronics Industry Bureau and bought her a private apartment, creating a parallel life alongside his official family. Yihe treated this mistress quite well. As he advanced, he did not forget to bring his young lover along on the climb up the social ladder. In late 1997, when he was promoted to a higher political rank with greater power, he used his influence to place Huping in a position at the Civil Affairs Bureau. Not only that, he also bought her another apartment and a car. Under the shadow of Yihe's power, Huping quickly built a luxurious life in Jinan. Her name suddenly carried weight, even making other officials show her some respect. Not only enjoying this newfound wealth, Huping also cleverly seized the opportunity to take care of her own family. She brought her parents and younger sister to Jinan, and through whispers on the pillow, she persuaded Yihe to arrange jobs and household registration for her relatives. Huping's insatiable greed had led the once incorruptible Yihe down the path of corruption. To satisfy her constant demands, he was forced to start accepting money to expedite matters. When rumors of his corruption reached the ears of Yihee's wife, her reaction surprised many. Instead of demanding a divorce, she chose to persuade her husband, hoping he would stop before it was too late. And in front of his wife, Yihee pretended to listen and declared he had cut ties with Huping. But behind those promises, he continued to cheat, turning his relationship with the young lover into an even more carefully hidden illicit affair. To deceive the public, Huping even married a doctor, but in reality, the two continued their secret tryst. The truth was finally exposed when the doctor husband discovered this hidden relationship and filed for divorce. Ironically, Duan Yihee not only destroyed his own family, but also contributed to the collapse of his lover's marriage. The sense of betrayal and injury gradually transformed into an insatiable greed in Huping's heart. If she could not possess this man's heart completely, she was determined to exploit his power to the fullest. In her mind, a twisted logic took shape. If she could not have his love, she would demand as much material wealth as possible as a guarantee for her own precarious future. In 2006, with ever-growing ambition, Huping requested a job transfer. As usual, Yihee abused his power to transfer her to the Land Resources Bureau. But it seemed nothing could fill the abyss of ambition within this woman. She continued to demand a luxurious 2400 SQFT apartment and the latest car model. This was the residence and car she was using when the incident occurred. Huping's greed was not simply a desire for material goods, but rooted in the loneliness and resentment that had accumulated. In the vast and cold apartment, she lived a shadowy existence, waiting only for Yihee's hurried visits at Tenkruyk at night. After years of living in the darkness of their illicit affair, Huping craved an official status, wanting to marry Yihee and stand beside him openly, no longer having to hide behind the walls of deception. But for Yihee, from the very beginning, she was just a fleeting romance, never to become his legitimate wife. The arguments between them grew increasingly violent, and in her anger, Huping began to use their secret relationship as a double-edged sword, threatening her older lover. This had enraged Yihee greatly. He felt that after he had elevated Huping so much, she had become ungrateful and unappreciative. Therefore, he began to seek ways to eliminate this threat. Huping's threats were like strong winds blowing at the tree of Yihee's power. The fear of his secret being exposed gradually transformed into a dark intent in his mind. Though he tried to suppress it, the thought of eliminating this threat continued to smolder in his heart, waiting to erupt. In his daily work, Yihee silently sought someone to carry out this plan. This person had to be not only trustworthy enough to keep the bloody story secret, but also bold enough to execute it. After many sleepless nights, he decided to choose his nephew-in-law, Chen Li. As the son-in-law of Yihee's elder brother, Chen Li owed a considerable debt of gratitude to Yihee, who had used his power to secure the police officer's position and help him advance. This familial relationship, reinforced by privileges and benefits, was an invisible chain binding their fates. In Yihee's eyes, this was the perfect tool for his sinister plan. In 2007, when Chen Li visited Yihee's home for the Lunar New Year, Yihee spoke to him about his troubles and expressed a desire for him to deal with Huping. Chen Li immediately agreed, saying that since his work was all arranged by Yihee, he naturally had to help him solve this problem. After discussion, they decided to eliminate Huping through a staged traffic accident. But they later found that Huping's activities were mostly confined to the city center, where it would be difficult to gain enough speed. If they acted carelessly, not only would they fail to kill Huping, but they could also expose their own identities. Therefore, this plan was abandoned. With the first plan failing, Chen Li came up with another idea. As a former military engineer, he knew how to manufacture explosives. He thought of using an explosive device to resolve this issue. After the explosion, all traces of the crime would be completely erased, a seemingly perfect strategy. After Chen Li shared this idea, Yihee also found it to be a good one. He provided Chen Li with detailed information about Huping, such as her home address and car keys. As a police officer, Chen Li easily exploited his network of connections to obtain the controlled explosive. He had a good relationship with a garage owner named Chen Changbing, 40 years old, who was skilled in remote control car devices. In the privacy of the garage, the two began their deadly experiments. The first 2 detonation tests were carried out to practice, leaving the final 3 triggers for the real act. Along with 2 kilograms of explosives and a remote control they had secretly constructed, they created a weapon that could tear apart metal and flesh in an instant. But as the murder weapon was completed, something in Chen Li's conscience suddenly awakened. He began to hesitate before the destructive power of what he had created. The thought that a simple button press could take a life, leaving no chance for redemption, began to haunt his mind. Though Yihe constantly urged him on, Chen Li continued to find ways to delay. In July 2007, Chen Li could no longer postpone it. On the afternoon of July 9th, Chen Li and Changbing drove the police car to the area where Hu Ping worked. Holding the bomb, they quickly located Hu Ping's light blue Honda. With trembling hands, they used Duan Yihe's remote control to open the car door, then carefully placed the deadly bomb under the driver's seat. In just a brief minute, they had completed the entire process. As it was their first time doing something like this, after placing the bomb, they hastily left the scene. On the road where Hu Ping usually drove home, the 2 evil perpetrators held their breath, waiting for their target, but fate played a cruel trick. After just 5 minutes of surveillance, they lost sight of the victim. Chen Li decided to take a desperate final move, driving to Jinqi Road, the familiar route Hu Ping always took. Here, they patiently waited for her to pass by. Chen Li, with a shaky hand on the remote control, sat silently in the police car, waiting for the signal to activate the devastating device, while Changbing got out to observe, ready to signal when Hu Ping appeared. At the time, there were many vendors and elderly people sitting and enjoying the cool air. To ensure Hu Ping would pass through here, Changbing even casually asked an elderly woman sitting nearby, "Is this the Ruyi residential community up ahead?" This seemingly innocuous question, coupled with the unusual tense expression and accent of the strange man, caught the old woman's attention. A few minutes later, Hu Ping's light blue Honda appeared on the street that afternoon, unaware of the impending tragedy. Changbing quickly made the call. Just seconds later, a horrific explosion tore through the peaceful evening air. The devastating power of the blast not only destroyed the car and its occupant, but also injured a street vendor nearby. This was the explosion on July 9th in Jinan that shook all of China. While the panicked crowd rushed and scrambled in chaos, a pair of keen-aged eyes did not miss an unusual detail. The strange man with the unfamiliar accent had hurriedly jumped into a police car and disappeared into the chaotic traffic. Noticing this peculiar detail, the elderly woman managed to jot down the license plate number of that police car, a seemingly minor detail that would become a key to unlocking the secret of the case. On July 13th, Yihe was taken away from his office. Within an hour, he had confessed everything and provided a long list of his social connections. After the trial, the court determined that Yihe had abused his position to receive and demand property from others, totaling 1.69 million yuan, approximately $220,000 US in cash, and 1.33 million yuan, approximately $173,000 US in assets of unknown legal origin. Thus, a bomb explosion had led to the exposure of corruption among government officials, and the investigation began to expand. In this tragedy, Liu Huping had shown herself to be no passive pawn. With the keen instincts of someone who had weathered many storms, she had sensed the tragic fate awaiting her. Before her destiny was sealed, she had told her family, "If I die, it is certainly Yihe who killed me." Yihe had also thought he could use his power to conclude the incident as an accidental death due to the hot weather causing a fuel tank explosion, but he did not realize that the distance to his own death was only 59 days away. After the incident, he was quickly arrested, but he did not think he would be sentenced to death. He thought they would give him a chance at rehabilitation to enjoy his old age. Therefore, throughout the interrogation, Yihe remained quite relaxed and cooperative. During the questioning, he even recounted his entire 61-year life story. In the interrogation room, the three perpetrators revealed different faces before justice. Chen Changbing, with a miserable expression, desperately pleaded, citing the moments of hesitation before attaching the explosive device as evidence of his intention to abandon the crime. Chen Li, trying to avoid the death penalty, repeatedly claimed he was just a victim of Yihe's coercion. As for Yihe, he admitted his guilt. However, when the prosecutor asked him if he regretted it and what he would do if given another chance, his answer chilled even the seasoned investigators. "I do regret, but only for choosing to use explosives. If given the chance to do it again, I would still kill her." In fact, this was not the first time Yihe had plotted to eliminate his lover. He said he had previously planned to kill her through gas poisoning, tire blowout on the highway, and many other methods, but all had failed. There was one time when Hooping's car had a flat tire before getting on the highway, and Yihe not only failed to kill her, but had to take responsibility for fixing her car. Ultimately, the court sentenced the defendant, Duan Yihe and Chen Li, to death, while the defendant, Chen Changbing, was sentenced to life imprisonment. The romance between Liu Huping and Duan Yihe showed that the 30-year age gap was not just a number, but a chasm that could not be filled by money or power. When selfish love intertwined with corrupted power, tragedy was inevitable. As the rain gently falls and the night grows deeper. Thank you for joining me here at Mr. Night Scared. True crime stories remind us of life's mysteries and the importance of staying aware, even as we seek comfort in the quiet of the night. If you've enjoyed tonight's tale, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Let the rain carry you to a peaceful sleep, and until we meet again, stay safe, stay curious, and let the night watch over you.